Mr. Tobin, can you hear us?
Yes.
Sir.
We're good to go here.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's get to it. Okay, so do I have a motion to open the public hearing on the district level safety plan? Yeah, do I have a second? Second. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, you guys want to give us basically run us through this?
Sure, this is the district safety plan, and this is for the public to review and has questions. So it's been posted for public comment for the last 30 days. 30 days. I don't believe we received any questions, Cheryl. No. We did get a compliment on it by email to me saying they appreciate the thoroughness and keeping our district and everyone in it safe. So thank you for that comment. And then the building safety plans are more confidential, and those are shared during executive session.
So, or does anybody have any questions or comments, concerns? So who actually uses this versus the building?
To go for our community's knowledge. Because the confidential ones have more of
Yeah,
the
no,
internal workings, the phone numbers of people who are involved.
and we have nothing from the public here.
No, nothing.
All right. Is sure there's nothing else? Anybody wants to say, comment? I don't know what to compare it to, you know, I haven't been through other districts, but it does seem very comprehensive. And it seems well organized. Anyway, all right, all in favor? We're not approving it tonight. This is- I have a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chris. I put it together. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, let's move to the consent agenda. Do we have this, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Chris, Jen, Center. Is there any questions or concerns, comments, anything you want to hold off for further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? The next one, I thought, don't we have a second hearing coming up? We didn't.
But that's just the pure discussion. It's not actually.
To approve D1. Second,
That's it's old business, which you're approving the district level safety plan.
but did we have a second hearing?
That we originally did, but it was removed.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the district level safety plan?
So moved.
Paul, do I have a second? Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. All in favor? Any against? All right, let's move to the building condition survey.
So that was part of a, this has been a past and a present conversation. So from my understanding, the last building condition survey was in 2015. And we're on a rotational, that doesn't bring us to a building survey until 2024. And the last conversation I believe before, and even during the facilities committee, was that we want one well before that. So that was determined and discussed again in the latest facilities committee, and to put an RFP after that.
So we're at the point of putting an RFP out. So when, and like, how long is that process? So put the RFP out, get the bids, we, review, do all that stuff, get that back. How long before we'll have a building position?
I mean, Brian's done this before too, so like, I would say it's a matter of, we need time to track the RFP language. We want it to be kind of somewhat centered on what our priorities are, so we get, the right firms interested. We put it on the street, we get them back, we bring through them, and we pick finalists, and either it's gonna be a subcommittee like the facilities committee, for example, or a different offshoot, or the board as a group, whatever you guys decide. We pick the finalists that we want to interview, and then we bring them in, we have conversations, we pick our pony, and then we go. So I'd say minimum month and a half.
I'm more interested in, if we're gonna put together some coordinated project between energy savings and building condition and all that for a possible capital project, we've got that date each year, putting it out to the public for vote.
Mhm.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, can we hit this year coming up? Or is this going to be 2023 before we actually get something on the ballot?
I mean, so working backwards, right? Your props are in 1st of April-ish. If you're gonna have a separate proposition for a capital vote, it's got to be written and locked in by April. So we're talking about onboarding a firm and designing a project that can be conceptually, shaken out in 90 days,
Right.
essentially. It's aggressive. I think.
Well, I just want to know if it's doable.
I
Or
think
should we plan on 2023 as the year?
I think you're going to have 3 options. You can phase it and work on a small thing for May that's going to be grown to the following May. You can look at an interim vote. I don't know what the history of this district is with the comfort level of doing an interim vote. Or you punt all the way to 23, but you have the full package laid out by then. So I'd say it's probably too soon to tell, but I would think that it's October-ish before we get a firm locked in with the whole process of the RFP to even start that build out.
That's the issue. So you can get a firm on board, do an RFP and do all the evaluation of the RFP, refine the RFP, put it out, get your respondents, evaluate the RFP, evaluate the responses, interview, and you can do that inside of 2.5 months for sure. The question then is, because they're going to be then doing a building condition survey, and then they're going to help put together a master plan, and then the board is going to have extensive work sessions, or unless they delegate that responsibility to the facilities committee. There are going to be extensive sessions on honing on a project, knowing that you're going to have, as an example, $7 million in your capital reserve, and then knowing that you're going to have debt falling in 2027. So there's going to be iterations of projects that you're going to want to do at no cost to the taxpayers, probably. And they're going to be probably relatively large because there's a lot of work to be done.
So this is a perfect example of why I'm such a fan of whatever about project plans. Because I don't have a problem of us saying April of 23, man, that's our date. What I have a problem is we get to April of 23, we go, oh, you know what? We still got 6 months and then 3 more. and then it's April of 24, then it's April of 25. If we think we can get this together by April of 23, then we need a project plan that backs out from there to now. We need to get RFP done by whatever, September 12th. And we need to get the responses back by September 30th. We need to, and then each month, we as the board need to see, are we on? Because part of our goals are to, take care of reduce the energy usage, fix the school so it's, not falling apart. I mean, we need to know that we can count on, now, as a board, we might not approve certain pieces of it or any of it. As a public, we may not approve any, but, and again, we have those decision checkpoints. If we're, we get the RFPs and we make the decision on somebody, maybe there's a decision checkpoint after, the plan comes together from the architects and whoever. So I don't know who.
If the board is saying that April of, or May of 23, during that vote, because you wanted to have it at the same time as a budget vote, that you want to be in a position to be able to go out to our voters for a capital project, we can absolutely put together a timeline to make that happen.
Well, I think the only reason I'm saying April 23 is because it seems like that's as soon as we can legitimately do it. We could rush it.
On and off cycle.
Yeah.
Yes, otherwise you'd be putting something up in a December vote, or a March vote, and plenty of school districts do that. But if it's not your desire to do that and you want to have only one vote at the end, then that
I mean, it's the only way we're going to meet our commitments as members of the facilities committee, as members of the wellness committee, of getting the school improved and helping the taxpayers at the same time. So, to me, and hopefully you guys are have your own thoughts. To me, if we think that we have a legitimate shot at April of 2023, then we need this project plan, and then actually it's against, are we there? Are we there? Are we there? And it shouldn't be a big discussion. It should be more of, until we get to, hey, here's what we're going to do. Then it should be a big discussion.
I think April of 23 is without a doubt easy to hit if we plan now. I think the best thing for us to do is get moving on the RFP process if the board is supportive of that endeavor, because the architects will inform timeline to a large extent. And honestly, a district of our size and location may benefit from an off-cycle vote, and the architects will tell us that straightforward, only because the on-cycle votes create log jams for bids and work, and everybody's bidding at the same time, prices go up. Depending on what we need and what we want, we may want to get a little creative, but I think that's a little bit too far down the road until we have the partnership with the firm in place.
Yeah. So, throw it out to you guys. Thoughts?
We would do the RFP, go to bid, and building the BCS with the new firm, like all in one.
I would like to call it a comprehensive physical plant assessment, which is going to look very similar to a building condition survey, but the building condition survey language is tied to regulation, and we're doing it off regulation cycles. So just for clarity of message, I would say we do the RFP, we get the partner on board, they give us a full physical assessment of our structures, our buildings and grounds. What do we need to fix? That highlights health and safety issues to the top of the list. We as a group can decide if something is on the line of health and safety and comfort where it lands, i.e. air conditioning and cooling, that kind of stuff. We make those decisions, we tie it with program, we tie it with those long-term goals, we tie that in with budget, money, and any sort of energy audit feedback that we get. And we start to tease out how much we can afford to do now. The good thing about this process is we'll be able to plan a 23, a 24, and a 25 referendum if we do it strategically. So we know this phase 1 is going up for vote May of 23. Phase 2 may go for vote 24 or 25. If we think big picture, we could really plan out the next 5 to 7 years of capital work starting right now, even if we don't put shovels in the ground until summer of 23.
No, I left the meeting. I felt positive after the meeting that between Brian and Elliot, they have a lot of experience with this, and they went back and forth. And you know, once we have the timeline put in place,
Then we just need to make sure that it's tied to our board goals, or at least what were our goals, so that, you know, the whole point of us doing this entire capital project is to succeed on those goals. David?
No, I agree. I think it seemed like we had a good direction after the plan makes a lot of sense. We don't want to be 3 or 4 months from now.
So who can we look to for that project? I mean, Elliot has nothing to do, right? I mean,
I'm just here to hang out with you, man.
that's what we like. No, I'm serious. I mean, who can we, and you don't need to answer tonight, but really, I would love to see, you know, 4 major phases of a project, you know, the RFP, the execution, design of the next project, whatever it is. And then that gets broken down as quickly as possible. So there's critical things along the timeline that need to be achieved. And then we as the board should be able to have we should know that, yep, we're right on schedule, we're delayed, but we got some buffer time, we're eating it up a little bit. Is there anything we can do to accelerate this? So.
I agree with what you're saying. I'm on board.
we told them what the needs and wants to. It'll tell us the needs, but we also might want wants, like green energy. So I mean, if we have, all right, we need to replace burners. Instead of doing that, we should do this. I mean, that's what a lot of discussions are here.
Well, there's peripheral stuff too. I mean, some of these companies will come in and, we've got them all over is they have these screens up that say, today we saved 2,000 trees, because we have solar energy, we have this, we have that. Something that draws in, and includes the curriculum, draws the kids in. Number one, see that we care. We're actually doing something about it instead of just drinking plastic bottles and shit. And that everything that's happening is they can see real results, not some budget number that we have. So being able, and as we've always talked, I would love to have kids some part of their curriculum embedded in solar. Maybe we do, like I said before, we do although maybe we don't want to do the booth anymore. Makes it too easy to use on weekends. But if we could tie something in, have one of the clubs do the solar work or put a windmill up there, it's not that it's going to save $1 million, but they get the idea. All right. And what about the same thing with the energy audit? I assume we're going to try to do the 2 of them at the same time.
For me, the energy
one's going to
audit,
feed the other, right?
the energy audit's going to tell you what parts of capital work can be done at a net zero cost efficient. That, and again, just my opinion, that's only relevant if you know that you have a box of things you want to do and you're picking out which ones can be net zero, right? Because that's going to help us inform the financial piece of the project. And the easiest example is every energy performance contractor wants to rip the lights out with no leaks. But if that means changing the ceiling out, and then I got to do the plumbing underneath it, I'm not doing one before the other. So I feel like getting the AE RFP done first, and then we can work with them to plan the energy audits and inform our financials, because the energy auditor may recommend things that are just not a priority for us. And
As long as I can see that in the project plan, the relationship between those and when one starts.
whatever you want, sir.
No, I mean, I think that's, as long as we take all these pieces and we bring them together so that we know we're moving forward, and that we know where we are. And, so we have, I know we're getting ready to send RFPs. Can we build like the RFPs for the energy audit and get, most of those are probably
Yeah, I would actually want to highlight language about desires for energy conservation focused programs in the RFP, because I would want hopefully architectural and engineering firms that lean that way to sign up. Like, I want to see people with lead AP credentials. I want to see CDMs on staff. You know, I shouldn't have more paperwork than the guy who we're paying to do the project, kind of thing. So, you know, I also want to see that they're tying it to curriculum. So, like, I heard your message about display boards about our savings program, but we actually have the opportunity to build our curriculum around these projects. That these are, you know, we're reshaping the buildings for what we want to teach, and not just teaching because we have it on site. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I would want to craft that language right into the RFP and see what we get back.
Any other comments for either one of these two things? So, in all seriousness, when first view of a project plan? Because I'd like not only the project plan, but the presentation of it. Here's where we are, here's the date, boom, out. I don't want to have that be a 2.5, 3 hour discussion every time you guys bring us the status. So when do we think we could get a first pass of this?
What exactly are you looking for?
The project.
Just, I mean,
It's just,
I can give you an outline of the plan in days with the perspective, what are we looking at? But
Yeah.
to really put some meat on the bones, it
Oh,
takes a couple months.
all right. All right.
Are you talking about the plan to get to where we want to be?
Yeah.
Like get the RFP first, and then we're gonna do that.
Exactly. All right. Opening plan.
Great. Getting ready for 2021-22 and having all of our Blazers back in person full time. So the core team met this week, have been meeting since the pandemic started, in reviewing guidance and making recommendations. So we wanted to review how we left in June. There was a lot of guidance then as well. Decrease social distancing, no fewer than 3 feet. That was the way we were able to bring in all of our kids in April to June, full-time, full in person. Masks were worn throughout the day, plenty of mask breaks. Students were taken outside for mask breaks. They could also take mask breaks when they were doing quiet work. Some were planned and some were just how that student was feeling at the moment. Masks were worn on buses. Then the mask requirement for outside changed and it became optional, so people could wear their masks or they didn't have to wear their masks. It was based on their own comfort. There was a daily screener, so checking and monitoring our own health as well as our students' health and our children's health. And then we had asymptomatic testing of students and staff, and that was going. So that's how we left in June. So the current guidance, there's not much change from what we were doing. There's still that 3 feet social distancing. It's not, there doesn't have to be social distancing on the bus, but there is definitely mask wearing on the bus. We're promoting vaccination. So when we were working with Dutchess County and the local Department of Health in scheduling appointments for people who wanted to be vaccinated. Always hand washing and making sure you're coughing in your, coughing in a tissue or coughing in your elbow, staying home when you're sick. You're no good to us here when you're sick. Stay home, take care of yourself. We did lots of contact tracing and quarantining. We did that with fidelity and in a very surgical manner so that we could keep as many students in school, but those who needed to stay home to be quarantined were identified and stayed home. Definitely routine cleaning and disinfection, and then the screening, testing to identify cases. We're on the next. Thank you. So the continued current guidance includes universal masking regardless of vaccination. And this information, this guidance is coming from the Centers for Disease Control, New York State Department of Health, New York State Ed even came out. It's supporting much of this guidance, as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics. Masks recommended for indoor activities and athletics. Cafeteria, increasing social distancing when you can. Potting students or cohorting them when eating. Screening, recommended for student athletes. Right now, the CDC is not recommending the daily screener and temperature checks at school. And mask individuals between 3 and 6 feet with properly fitting and consistently worn masks will not be required to quarantine. So students who are 3 feet away from each other, there was that rule that we used to have when we were at 6 feet. If you were in contact with somebody for 10 minutes consecutively or 15 minutes over a period of 24 hours, you had to quarantine. So students who are 3 feet or more won't have to do that, but if they're less than that, they would have to quarantine. And we would have to do lots of contact tracing for that.
Or what do you mean by COVID screening recommended for student? Is that just a questionnaire or is that more than that?
That was in the guidance.
I know, what do they mean by that?
I'm sorry,
What do they mean by that?
that's that COVID testing that we were doing. to see
They're
if they
actual
tested.
testing, not just screening and answering questions.
Right. That's what we
We
would,
actually use the word interchangeably, and asymptomatic screening of anyone versus people.
yeah, they changed the wording a little bit and now it's
That's
confusing.
why,
Yeah,
And then
thank
we
you.
also have the daily screener, that's really.
Yeah. So recommendations for reentry to 3 feet social distancing minimum following the guidance, universal masking inside for all staff and students. Oh, next one. Universal masking on bus transportation, social distancing not necessary. We continue to COVID clean and disinfect as we have been doing since pandemic hit us. Voluntary asymptomatic testing for students and staff is made available to school districts. We've reached out to the local Department of Health and County to see what's the availability of test kits. Routine bus cleaning and disinfection will continue. Making sure that we have our windows open, fans on, having our kids and staff outside as much as possible, whether it's for lunch or music or outdoor classrooms. And we would like to continue the daily screener, even though the CDC doesn't necessarily recommend it. We found it to be helpful to gauge the health of our community. And it's all just a good reminder every day to check how you're feeling, your own health. How is and checking your child, how are you feeling? I think it's a good practice and it helped in the past, so we don't want to change things that have helped keep our kids and our staff in our buildings.
So what do they say? I mean, it recommends. Like athletes and activities with increased respiration, CDC recommends asymptomatic screening. Those kids says no. The parents say no. Are they out with sports? Or are they just, oh, okay, we'll go to the next one? I mean, I know that they're hedging their bets when they say recommend, which means you can do whatever you want. But what happens, we need a plan in place that says, kid said no. What do I do? Send them home, kick them off the football team, kick them off the baseball team, the soccer team. So what are we doing with these things? Are these like failure to listen to the teacher or failure to listen to staff because they're suspended or something like that? Do you have any thoughts about how to handle that?
Well, Perry, I know last year, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, in section 1, it was as tolerated, was the language with masks for athletics. So in other words, if a kid could wear it, they found themselves struggling, like Laura said, they could have a mask break and have a mask break. That's what the language was last year. That guidance has not come out yet. And a lot of districts made it part of their code of conduct that if you didn't comply, at least in school, sports were a little different because the kids having a hard time breathing and running sprints during August practice in football, you don't want to exacerbate it. So they were allowed to, the language used was as tolerated for athletics. That's what it was last year. They have not come out with guidance yet from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association or section 9 or section 1 that I know of.
And even though language about asymptomatic screening, I mean, if the kid says, no, I don't want, or the parent says, no, you're not testing my kid, what?
Did it on a voluntary basis. I should do that if you want to give us permission.
Okay, so we just, so it's not really, it's sort of if they want, if they'll allow parents and kids, right?
Mm-hmm. I thought too, I recall from last year, it was only 20% or a certain number. It wasn't every student or every athlete. Is that pretty accurate, Laura?
Definitely the yellow zone for
You're a
high risk
cluster.
of community transmission. Same with section 9 poll, we don't have the recommendations from the section yet, but we did get an email today that they should be in early next week. We don't have that information, but I guess there have been conversations and there's a document that's been sent for decision making. So we'll see. In terms of our testing last year for athletes, it was the high
risk.
for the high
High
risk
risk.
sports.
So, I mean, my only thing, it's really not our, as a board, our, other curiosity. You should just make sure you have, we're gonna tell them they have to wear masks. What happens if they don't? What's the, because you want to make sure it's consistent. All the teachers know, all the staff know. If the kid tells you, nope, not putting that on, they're out, they're in, they gotta go sit in the library, whatever it is. I would just make sure you have rules, specific rules that you can take everybody through, because, everybody's gonna have to get involved and make sure this happens.
We have to also, we have the mask waiver request based on medical conditions. So if there are concerns that parents have, we can meet with parents on sort of a case by case basis.
And I think Caroline and Laura, I don't know if Al's on the call, but I think our only high-risk sports are volleyball at this time because we don't have football and we don't have competitive cheer or cheerleading, do we?
For football, we follow our guidelines, whatever they may be, or social.
Well, Dover is the host.
Another thing, last year, Laura, the state of New York, through the soon-to-be ex-governor, still governor, mandated that schools have masks in the school. There's no mandate. Well, guidance from the CDC, playing a ping pong game, and
Right, it's not an executive order.
there's no order at this point. It may come when new governor Kathy Hochul takes over, but as of today, it has not. So, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, yeah, and we're really seeking clarity from people that we're depending on for guidance in healthcare and health and safety.
So any decision we make today may change tomorrow if the order comes down from.
Yeah,
Well-
and actually, even this is draft because we know it will be changing over time. Tomorrow, like you're saying, 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
I mean,
a
I
week
think,
into school.
for the parents though, and the kids themselves, day one, unless something dramatically changes, everybody's in school. Everybody, you wear a mask when you're in the buildings. If you're an athlete, you get tested. If you're an athlete, you still have to wear the mask except for whatever. Just some simple rules because, I'm sure parents are gonna wanna know, and I think it's next for this policy number 4327. What happens if the kid, if a class is sent home to quarantine? Well, I mean, we've never had remote access before COVID. I don't think we want to have the teachers coming in every day going, do I have to teach remote today because I got 3 kids out with COVID? To me, if we leave the homebound instruction, almost the way it is, the way it was, which is you send home the work and hopefully they work with their parents if they do it. And the kid has their appendix out or the flu. We've never had a remote access for them up until COVID.
No, but we have had to send tutors to the house.
Okay, but they have their computers, right?
No, tutors.
Tutors. Well, then we're gonna have to figure that out.
Not for a
right?
class of 15, 18 kids. The whole class has to quarantine.
Right, but we need to look at the policy because it says if they're out for medical reasons, and quarantine can be considered a medical reason for 10 days or more, that we have to provide that instruction. So we need to
Correct.
figure something out.
Yes.
Well, you're not gonna
Yes,
send tutors to a person that's quarantined either.
Correct.
No, no,
Well,
But that would be where virtual instruction would
Right,
be taught
right,
about
correct.
without the, synchronous students in front of you, hybrid model.
yeah, but then the kids are gonna say, the parents are gonna say, well, my kid's got anxiety about COVID. I don't want them in there. How come that one came home with COVID and they're out for 10 days, they get instruction at home. My kid can't get instruction at home for anxiety. I think and maybe the answer is you have a teacher in each building or two that are remote teachers, right? They, got grades 3 through 5. And if there's 2 third graders, a 4th grader and a 5th grader that are home, that teacher keeps them out of the classroom. Because having our teachers have to basically go, oh, tomorrow I got to go fully remote because my whole class is out. Then, or I got to go remote for 2 and 25 are going to be in the classroom. I don't know how teachers could respond to that. I mean, that's like, and parents as well.
The benefit of having a mask requirement, that we're able to keep our children 3 feet or more apart, and then we don't have to quarantine. Correct.
Right.
Well, unless they,
What if a parent
they get it, they're
gets
asymptomatic.
COVID? Well,
No,
you
no, no.
can't send your kid, like my daughter, if I got COVID, I wouldn't be able to send my daughter to school. But she's not actually sick. So, or, saying she's not, so like there,
I mean, last
She has
year
to
we had that party that wasn't in school, some kind of a party, and all the kids got sick, so they all had to quarantine. What happens if we're doing that now and we don't have any remote education? I don't know, and we really have to take a look at that, because
when we went back and then we went 5 days, there were still a handful of kids that stayed home.
Yes.
Like, is that something we can model? Like, can we do that, or is that getting
So
sticky?
I'll speak from a technical perspective. We are technically equipped to provide hybrid instruction into next school year. We didn't remove any of the things we added last year. Last year, roughly 20% of our population stayed home for the duration of the school year. So I think from a tech perspective, we can do it. Instructionally, I feel like we should do better than the way the policy is written, because the policy was written well before COVID. I think to Perry's point, we don't want it to be abused. So it kind of feels like a triangulated conversation between what we are physically capable of doing, what's instructionally we're responsible to do, and what makes sense for our teachers and our kids.
yeah, you can't say, well, if the kids are COVID, out with COVID, then we'll give them remote, access. So we basically have to see if the kid is out for an extended period of time, we'll give them remote, if that's the way we upgrade this policy. I don't know. We're basically saying everybody's in school unless you're quarantined.
Last year, kids were getting sent home pretty easily for any symptoms at all, which is appropriate. But if they go home and don't test, they're essentially.
And if they do test, it might take a couple days.
It actually can be long.
Yeah, so
It's 10 days.
if they don't test, as of last year, after 48 hours, they were essentially treated as if they were positive, because we have no way of differentiating, so we would have to still hold that quarantine mandate.
So they then fall into that bucket. Or can we do somewhat testing in school for kids who have?
We can only do asymptomatic testing, because you need actual medical professionals to. So our LSL agreement, the limited service lab, only allows our nurses, because it's not diagnostic, it's just screening, to be able to do asymptomatic testing. So there is a differentiation that's made if somebody is symptomatic, we cannot test them.
But if you're sent to home in quarantine, you don't necessarily have to test at all.
No, but then you're right, but then you're quarantined, you can't test out of quarantine, right? So you gotta run the scores anyway, but if you are sent home and quarantined because you were in contact with another student and you then become symptomatic, at that point, that's when your quarantine then starts, right? So, like David was saying, if someone's in with allergies, yes, they could potentially, go and get tested and it's just allergies and they have known allergies and the doctor could write, they can return to school. But if you choose not to have your child tested, then after 48 hours, we have to assume that they're COVID positive and treat them as if they were.
And if it's after 10 days that we have to supply a tutor and they have to quarantine for 10 days, I mean, do we really, other than like we always did, you send the work home and, you know, if you're going to be out for 4 days, you send 4 days worth of homework home. Kid hopefully does it and works with the parents to get it done. I worry if we start thinking about COVID only, and then, you know, the kid that tears his ACL, that's out of school for 2 weeks rehabbing, you know, now all of a sudden we're providing remote, and then parents start to say, well, I consider anxiety a medical condition, which it is. And so I can't send my kid in. They're going to be home with anxiety. So now you're going to provide me remote education.
Sounds like we have to run it anyway, right? Up to a certain point, we have to, whether we're going to do tutor. I mean, for an ACL or anxiety, you might be able to do a tutor, but for anything COVID, you won't be able to do a tutor.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't know how we handle this.
But it seems like a lot of kids could potentially fall into that bucket.
Yeah.
Pretty quick,
Yep.
whether we actually have real cases, allergies or.
It's quicksand, any way to look at it. You know, last year again, when we had mandates, and there were procedures that seemed to work. So without the mandate, we start the procedure, we know it's human nature is probably good intention, but somebody's going to try it. So how do we do it? I don't know. We need to for legitimate planning, to make planning for virtual if a whole class of children or more than one class or groups, we'll call them pods, because that was last year. All class groups, and if they're out, but you have to, the tutor can be the virtual computer. I don't know any other way of doing it. We have to have some kind of contingency in place, ready to go. It doesn't mean it's up and running. It means it has to be ready to go.
Well, and I also think the teachers, you know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but they took a lot of crap last year about, you know, whether if remote's not working, or I don't like this, and you know, we can't expect our teachers to Monday through Thursday, they're just in class teaching like they always do. And then somebody calls them late Friday night and says, oh, your class is out, you got to start teaching remote tomorrow morning. Because they're not set up. They haven't done their whatever they do. I would think. I mean, to me, you can't put this all on the teachers. And I think Brian Beck or Red was talking to one of the folks up there, and they said they have pretty much a teacher that teaches like 3, 4, 5. And she might have 2, 3 third graders and a 4th grader, it's 4 5th graders. But she's teaching them all. You know, okay, you do this, you do this, and you do. Maybe that's how we have to, and maybe that's our tutor with the computer.
Yeah, until you get into, so, I mean, a couple of things. One, unfortunately, we live in a world now where we have to be prepared to pivot at any time, right? Just like it happened last year, we don't know. We have no idea how this is gonna play out. So we have to be prepared to pivot. Do we want to pivot? No, but we have to be prepared for that. So in terms of technology, in terms of, you know, being ready to go remote, should we need to, we have to be prepared for that possibility. You know, it sounds at the elementary school very manageable to do something like one tutor, multiple different grade levels, but then you get into, you know, AP physics, right? That person who's gonna teach AP physics with any type of success is maybe not the same person that's gonna be able to, you know, teach AP up. I don't know. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I think we really owe the parents a picture of what that, you know, look, here's our best shot. We're gonna, you know, do this, and if something bad happens, you know, then we're gonna do this. And we owe that to the teachers too. You know, if tomorrow if 5 of your kids are out tomorrow, you're teaching remote and local. If, whether there are 5 kids that have COVID or 3 that have, whatever, or after that, you don't have to do it till 10 days, but know that the 10 days is gone. I don't know. But I think we have to have some very specific guidance for I'm sorry.
But
We need-
the
we need to
attendance
have-
policy is 4327. Is that coming, are we gonna go to that to me?
Yes, it's on there.
That's what, the one we just wanted to say, consider like routine, wanted to say, we want to preserve the continuity of learning. So tutors 1 hour or 2 hours, what the requirement is for certain grades, elementary and secondary. Is that going to preserve the continuity of education for our kids? It is messy, right? When kid goes is home or 5 kids are home, we have students here in person. But in this, it's difficult, but if we're able to kind of keep everybody on the same page in our classrooms, whether they're remote or in person, it's good for kids and it's good for teachers as well. When a student is home for 10 days, that's what this policy is about, 10 days. Getting a tutor and maybe some work sent home. What if you had 5 kids, 10 kids in your class getting that same kind of instruction? They're going to fall behind. So we're trying to figure out what that balance is, and we also want to work with union leadership to see what's doable, what's manageable, and what's just for our kids. How can we preserve that continuity? So we're grappling with it, most definitely. So we appreciate your feedback and ideas.
So when do we think we're gonna have something that people can easily understand? It doesn't have, political guidance in it. It says, this is what we expect. In this situation, this is what would happen. And in this situation, and no, we're not going to allow, we're not gonna deal with kids that have anxiety that are just going to stay home. I don't know how we're dealing with that.
Anxiety or just medical and with needing medical diagnosis, not just the parents.
Oh, I'm sure. But I'm sure.
But
That's
do we have
it.
kids now, I mean, not, I don't know, but have kids now that have anxiety, in general, like, do they see like, a counselor or something? Like maybe there's somebody in school.
Well, I think that kids had those things even before
Yeah,
COVID.
so whatever plan was in place for them.
Yeah.
And also we've been in conversation with superintendents with BOCES. Can they, if there are extended periods of time where students medically can't be present, they have virtual learning, so we can work with them through posters and provide them with the virtual learning through funds and BOCES.
Matter of just identifying our staff, looking at it from a grade level, breaking it down to a class level. So what can we do? I mean, if the class has half the class out, that's kind of an obvious, we have to switch remote. If a grade has X percentage, we only have, one online tutor, she can only handle this much. If it gets to that point, then we have to kind of open up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just what we can handle and where that threshold is. So we can, but not that, I agree with Perry, not that we want to have to do that. And I do think you should have doctor's notes to be out, and that type of thing, not just,
And even the giving them time, if over half the class is out, do you go, that class is fully remote? And it's not like day one of your quarantine isn't remote. We need 2 days to switch you over. Those are the kinds of things that parents, I would think, are gonna wanna know, so they know, any given day, I'm gonna be working from home because quarantine or whatever the reason is.
And the thing about it is ever changing. You can make as many plans as
or
and then-
the recommendations you had for Millbrook, are you looking to make them requirements tonight? Or are you still waiting on the reentry recommendation? So like just easily masking, are you looking to say, as of right now, unless they come out and say we can't, which is not gonna happen, are we going into the new school year? And there's certain things I think parents and children want to know as soon as possible, and I think that's kind of, there's a few easy ones to say, as of right now, this is what we're doing.
one's primarily around sports, I think, we're really waiting for guidance. These are things that are in our heads and we're considering them. But we have to sort of wait and see right now, and I'm hoping that guidance comes out in the next few weeks before school starts.
But I thought what we could do tonight is, you know, we know everyone's expected back, right? That's key point number one. Everyone in the building is expected to wear a mask. Everyone is, you know, I mean, we don't know.
Well, we have that.
Right, but I think our thing is we're gonna universal masking required. Right, well, that's what I'm saying. I thought tonight we could do conceptual approval of the key items. So that parents can get, you know, hear it and understand.
You need more than conception, you're gonna have to make a quote decision unless somebody overrules us.
So I mean, we don't need it, there isn't a motion. It's,
But yes, I understand.
we have, this is what the board.
This is what the board.
So really, the key masks, universal masks, we've done COVID cleaning, we assume you're doing that. Responsible hand washing, voluntary, routine bus cleaning. These are things that you guys own, not kids and parents. The athletics, I mean, with increased respiration, recommends screening. I think that's a key thing that we should, you know, conceptual thing we should approve or just whatever, reject. Mask for athletes, and then we just document that we're still working through what happens if. I mean, I think that gets us to where parents understand at least what day one looks like. They do maybe all over the floor, but you know, they're gonna come back with masks, they're gonna come back in person. Athletes are going to be tested if they're in that category. Athletes must wear masks. And then,
It's almost exactly like last year, with the exception that there's no choice. No, what we expect everybody to do.
How does the testing work? Have we gotten a whole new supply of testing?
No, I reached out to Dutchess County to see what the availability is. So this is something we want to move forward with. We have to see what if we can.
That's the one thing that I am very much on the fence for. And that's why I asked the screening machine.
what does it do for us? Like, if we're kidding, hey, Joey looks pretty healthy today, let's go test him. I mean, what does that buy us?
Was it random last year or random with
It was
permission?
more voluntary last year.
Not.
With athletes,
I thought the athletes had to, but
Right.
kids in general, there's two separate things.
it was a high risk,
All
that
the
was
kids in
mandatory.
school, you can voluntarily do it, but the athletes, they had
High
to.
risk.
I know, we didn't
Right, right.
volunteer, we got an email saying, okay, that's.
So we're not, the kids, you know, non-athletes, we're not testing, right?
And then over
That's the plan.
Well, it says volunteer.
Yeah,
So-
if we're able to obtain the test and people want to use that testing,
So last year, that was probably more valuable because it was more
It's a
asymptomatic
screen,
cases among children. That may or may not be the case.
Can you move that up? Sure.
And
That's it.
I think some parents,
That's the last one.
that would make many parents, some
There we go.
parents feel comfortable to have that option.
Yeah.
And so if you do have that option, will be the nurse testing or the, not the, or the drive, well, the nurse is testing, but, and there'll be nurse for the child aside,
Did it prior.
or would it be the drive-through?
yeah, and I
Right.
think the reason we did the drive-through was for the developmentally appropriately aged, you
Yes.
know, the younger kids. So we tried to make it so parents could do with that.
Right.
for the drive-through, but the secondary students could just go to the nursing.
So do you have an idea which one you would offer? Or that's to be determined?
I mean, I think that was a decision that was made for a reason, so, you know, I think we probably would want to keep it where elementary students can have a parent.
These tests are not proven to be 100% accurate, nowhere near it. It's being given non-medically, it's not the ones you send out. And one thing when we were mandated from Albany to do high-risk sports, and when we did it for ourselves, for sports, but I want legal guidance involved. We want to test every student in the district that comes into the buildings.
Well,
This is just voluntary.
Voluntary.
It's the voluntary student.
Again, it's voluntary. I still want legal guidance on before we move forward with doing general student population. Whether this is somewhere we should offer, go, assuming we get the test.
If you think about it, I mean, if we're voluntary asymptomatic testing, we don't need to even talk about the athletes, right? I mean, because that's a voluntary basis. That's I mean, so if we're saying we're gonna test everybody, if they agree, then,
What do we, I didn't ever hear anyone say we were testing. Now, voluntary.
so
maybe
it's
some
voluntary
percentage.
asymmetric testing for students and staff.
So do we need to put a, didn't we have a target last year, a certain percentage of students? I don't think we ever tried to test everyone.
No, that was when we were at clusters, and they were saying you have to do 20% of the population, but that all changed, that all. went away.
That was only based on the retail daily enrolling average, that if we were ever deemed a yellow zone, like high risk for infection, we would have to do 20% of our population for each building. We were never deemed a yellow zone, so we never had to be any percent of the population. Other than the high risk sports, it was on a strictly voluntary basis.
And I think that's the thing we have to discuss more is the high risk sports. So that's the only requirement, everything else is voluntary, which I would check with.
Also, I want to check with legal on the population, regular students, because God forbid you get a false positive, so we're sending kids home now. And you're gonna out of school X amount of days, we're gonna medical test with some parents. Right, and now it's cost involved, it was work by parents, and it turns out to be a false positive that we gave. No legal guidance here, you know.
Just in the first round in February, we did have guidance for the testing of the sports. And then there was another piece that the board directs the superintendent to arrange for surveillance testing of students and staff on a voluntary basis. So we have been in conversations with them, but I definitely agree that we should circle back to them and see if things have changed in any way.
No, yeah,
but we-
so if it's voluntary, then parents should, I'm sure I sign some kind of voluntary waiver, so we don't get sued with a false positive.
Or do you remember approximately what the consent rate was?
It was pretty low. It was another layer of mitigation,
No, I
right?
know.
Yeah, so
I know.
it's social distancing, wearing a mask, hand hygiene, daily screeners, surveillance screening, so high touch, watching high touch areas. So it was just part of the work that we were doing to mitigate.
And none of this is required. I mean, when the CDC recommends,
Right, so are we,
you know, we don't have to do it. They recommend we do it. It's
so
like
we,
they
are we
recommend it.
figuring it out tonight? Are we voting that yes, athletes, finding respiration, yes, all kids have to wear masks?
I think we should try to get conceptual approval on all kids are back in school. All kids wear masks in the building, masks outside, whatever that is not required. I think we can then say, we're not comfortable with the testing yet, we need a better plan, or we continue to talk about it. But there's certain pieces of this that we're gonna say, like, review policy 4327. We're gonna do that. We need to, I don't know if we can get through it tonight, but we need to do that so parents know what happens if. But So what's your thought? Let's talk about doing one at a time. So masking, or masks in general. Yes, no, I mean, it's masks in the building, mask high risk sports, and no masks outside, is that right? Optional masks outside.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so talk about masks in school. Wear masks in school, no masks necessary outside. What's your position on that? Start.
Based on the fact that CDC, Department of Health, New York State Education Department, the medical experts are recommending this strongly. And in fact, I looked at the dashboard today. We have 732 active cases in our county, 4.62 positive rates, and we're on an increasing trend and 28 hospitalizations. My position as a board member is not based on my family or my home. It has to be based on all the children in the district. So I can't see going against the medical experts, at least for the beginning of the school year. In April, when we were bringing all the children back in mass, our positivity rate was 2% on a decreasing trend. I don't know how we should not start with masking. I sympathize, I fully agree it's an inconvenience for the parents that don't want to send their child in with a mask. But the goal of our education system is to have the children in. So in order to do that with masks, I feel like the masking is just, it's an inconvenience, but we know academically, psychologically, they need to be in. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. My last point was though, I would like to see, and not tonight, but the administration come up with a plan, a database plan for reducing the restriction. So if we're starting out with masks, to me that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, I could be wrong, but it doesn't mean we're signing off on this as this is what we're doing all school year. So it's very important for the parents to know, based on guidance we may receive, but also our own monitoring, when and if those restrictions would decrease.
Anthony, I agree. But I do agree with Chris said about, putting it, I mean, I didn't feel at the end of last year we should have mandated the mask. The numbers were down at the end of the school year. I had a different feeling. And just like most people, as we kind of go through this, you have your great weeks where we're getting through it, this is great. We can, and then you're like, oh no, we're back to the drawing board. But I do think we should have some sort of threshold where, at least as a committee, we sit down and say, revisit. So it might be 30 days we do it. It might be if the numbers drop to 4%, 3%, 2%, but we've got to get our heads around.
For me, definitely support masks. I think the biggest thing for me is I'm concerned that we don't have the number of kids that can be pushed out of quarantine and impact on parents. Kids are having fall behind. Sense. Be the parents' choice.
Longest speech than that. These masks, I think they're great for preventing probably a common cold, which is good, keeps kids out of school, in school. But I don't say, yes, it's an inconvenience, even though quote, a minor one. This building, it was hot when we started, I was sweating. And I was a fan, and see, I have my mask here, I'm not wearing it. Talking about the children of minors, they can't make the decision for themselves. And it should be a parental decision. These quote, so-called experts, and I'll say it again, may be right, or they may be wrong. Again, they're like lawyers. Both sides of the fence on every issue, and you have to see which one you truly believe in. Did they help? Maybe. The only mask I would be for is a medical grade, what is it, N95 or whatever, but those things are bulky and no way I would expect children. So, I may not be popular, but no, I think it should be a parental choice. Want to wear it, wear it. If the child doesn't want to wear it, the child doesn't.
Oh,
Total other end of that, I think that the new governor is gonna have a mask mandate, number one. So that'll happen in the next 10 days. But I think that exactly what this guidance is where we should be, both academically and athletically. I agree with all of it. So that would be a yes.
thanks, Paul.
I went back and forth a little bit considering whether or not, should just. We kind of broke that down for me. I was concerned that if I make that decision for my child, in whichever direction, make it to school, I don't think it's a police. Peer pressure, I'm not sure the parents are going to be.
You're right. We are not, quote, the experts. We should not be making this decision. No school board should be making this decision. I hope, Paul, you're right that the governor mandates it should not be in our.
It'll take it off our plate, yeah.
Let's see. As a politician to actually make a committed statement, haven't seen it in a long time. I'm personally, I mean, I wish the kids didn't have to wear them because, just the fact that they're all walking around with weird things on their face and, they kind of think they know them, but they're not sure. But masks don't just protect the kid or the person wearing it. It's also about protecting the others. And if we just turn it into, a friend of mine's kid was at camp and they had one positive, nobody was wearing masks, it was outside. And Department of Health basically went through and said, well, I think they, at one point or another, they were all near each other for 10 minutes or more. So guess what? The entire camp is quarantined. And it was 68 kids out like that. And, it's just, so to me, it's just the safer we can be. And again, it's not just our kids, it's our staff. We need to make sure that we're making these kids as safe as possible. So I vote for your policy.
Then we should, based upon what you said, Perry, then we should also have it mandated outside because they play and based on that logic.
But on the other side, every time we talk about it, well, they'll social distance. And when they're outside or they're in the hallways and see somebody, they're not social. They're, hugging each other or whatever. So, I mean, to me, it's not an easy decision. It's not even a yes, no decision. It's kind of like, well, 51, yeah, I think they should be wearing masks. So, David, Paul, myself, for wearing masks, Jen and Howard against, or what, not against, but making it a parental choice. So we got through one. We want to see, well, bringing all the kids back to school without any remote. We're all good with that, I assume. Everybody, Jen, you cool with that?
Bring them back.
Bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
That-
Oh, yeah.
Except for.
Except for my
There
dad.
you go.
Make sure that's all.
You're good. All right, so we got two. What about the high risk sports? Well, first of all. Let's go. Daily screener. I mean, leave that. Keep going. Athletics and activities. All right, so athletics and activities get the screen. Let's talk about the appropriate with increased respiration, less socially distant, wear a mask. So let's talk about that. I mean, back to Howard's point, if they're, if you're playing football and you're not spitting at somebody's face, you're not trying to. It's same with any of those, with soccer, you're exposed.
Yeah, but it's funny, Perry, you bring up soccer. Soccer is not considered high risk.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. It's also like soccer isn't considered a contact sport.
I know. It's just interesting. But for us, though, I wanted to ask the question with the high risk right now, do we only have football, volleyball, and do we have cheerleading or no? I don't think we do.
No cheerleading. And Dover has,
Yeah,
And
we have
Dover-
football is over.
Yeah. So basically, they have to make the decision too, or if we're hosting with them. We merged with Dover. Who's the host? Dover?
Yes, I mean, I think we have to play by Dover's rules.
Yeah. If they're the host, yes, we do. I believe. But we could ask that question. I believe so. So basically, just volleyball, and with indoors, I think it should have to happen with volleyball. Outdoors is a little different, but indoors with volleyball, that should be a yes. It's high risk.
Yeah, we'll get to the test.
Oh, we're talking about asking.
Masking the high risk sport, so really volleyball.
Volleyball. Oh, there's airborne.
Chris?
I'm comfortable drawing the line inside. and out, so I can see we're gonna do that, so.
That's good. Yeah.
You're not over 18, but you're just
So if you're over 18, they can make the choice.
that happy.
Yeah.
Only say correct choice.
And if it's mandated inside, which we're already doing.
Yeah.
All gym during the day would be wearing masks.
Yeah.
Correct? Even though the ceilings in the gym are a little higher than feet. Now, it's really moot at this point. So, well, I have to be consistent. It should be parental choice.
And again, I mean, and hopefully we won't go into some really high temperature. That was the worst part, was wearing masks when it's 95 and 100% humidity. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because we've already said you have to wear them when you're inside. So I vote just to keep it consistent. I vote yes. Masks for sports and indoors. Actually, so yeah, and we don't have any high risk sports outside yet. Right? Okay. So we got Paul, Chris, David, yes, Barry, yes, Jen and Howard, parental decision.
Or are you still planning on the same limitation for people watching sports?
I haven't gotten any guidance regarding that.
I'm just curious, something to think about since
Yeah.
schools start so.
Consideration.
Okay, so Cafeteria, so are we okay with getting some recommendations on this homebound instruction policy, the isolation spaces, and the June protocols in the cafeteria?
So just some practices we have, students are going outside and outside as much as possible. I know some of the principals are thinking maybe they'll decrease the class sizes in the cafeterias where students may go outside, half of them may go outside for our playground and have to stay inside and then they'll flip. So just trying to figure out innovative ways to social distance even more.
But they're indoor, when they're indoors or wearing masks, when they're not. They're outside, except for
So trying to
yes. So we need to go through, or we get a rental decisions. And we want to go back through that specific one. Cafeteria.
I think if they're indoors, we already made the indoor protocol, and then they're eating out, so we-
I just checking.
Okay.
All right, so conceptual approval for get them all back. Everybody wears masks inside, including the high-risk sports. We haven't talked about high-risk outdoor sports yet. We'll do that hopefully after the next season, during the next season. We're okay with the cafeteria protocols, and we're gonna get more work done in 4327 to figure that out. You guys come up with, a set of recommendations. The last one is this asymptomatic testing for athletes. Where are we? I'll start with the second, Chris.
I think all testing should be voluntary. Mandated.
Should we do it at all?
I don't mind with voluntary testing unless there's a legal aspect. If they're signing a waiver and we're somehow just mitigating the best we can, I don't have an issue with it. We're just offering a service safely. I know if it's a false negative, it can cost time, but you're saving time with them going to Pulse MD and getting testing. You can look at it differently. As long as we're not liable for anything, I'm fully for voluntary.
So if we change it, so Chris is the first bullet, athlete and activities with increased respiration. You're for making that a voluntary process. David?
Say, I think we can provide it, I think that's great as long as it's.
Yeah.
Voluntary proper.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're gonna take this whole list of stuff and make sure the lawyers check.
Voluntary.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I think, especially if we just do, not every student, but if we're just doing a percentage of the team, or are we talking about the whole team here?
Oh, it's a voluntary thing, so the ones that are on the team that agree to do it.
Yeah, as long as the parents are very clear and they understand who's doing it, when the testing is being done. Is the nurse doing the testing? Is it being done during school, before practice? Is it being done, so those types of things I think are very important, the details, but yes.
Right.
So we'd be saying it would be. And that's initiated by the parent of the student.
Yeah, well, if the student is 18 years old or over, they can choose to or not. But
Yeah, I'm just asking, there's a little bit of a line between request being.
oh, I guess. So when we say pure voluntary, are we talking about, signs up for volleyball, and we say, your parent needs to check yes or no whether they, want their student voluntarily tested, or are we saying, we think you should be tested, but you can sign off on it.
We asked just for consent from the parent. That was asking.
I would differentiate it a little bit from just the voluntary for any student. Say you're signed up for the sport and then have it on there, like Perry said, would you like to be tested? So it's a little, they can do both, but.
Whereas generic testing could be like the drive-up, so it's really just child. Or said the line, if it's sports, they'd almost have to opt out, so they'd rather not test. Whereas the rest of the students, it would be purely they would want to test. Requesting.
They have to say no for voluntary, they have to.
Right now, we're just talking about athletes, but there is one more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Paul?
For the testing, we're still on the testing piece. I already said, yeah.
For athletes,
Yes.
all right, yeah, and I'll go yes too. And then the testing of students in general, wherever it was, you can send me the page.
That was voluntary asymptomatic testing for students and staff was made available to the schools.
So that's basically saying, if you want to go get tested, they're over there. So Chris, you okay with that? Chris?
Yeah, David Howard's point as long as.
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so I think that's the only thing, so we need to get that put into like bullet points so parents see it. We need to get legal to review it and evaluate our exposure.
Question that's not on this list, but I know it's important to get, mostly kids, it's the lockers. Are they gonna have, they're carrying jackets around, so no kids wear jackets, and then they're carrying their books around all day and they're complaining their shoulder hurts. Is there a way, since we do an alphabetical system, that we could say, and I know it might be convoluted, but I'll let you guys simplify it. But, you're basically saying, A, D, G, H, first period, third period. I don't know. There's got to be a system where you can keep the distance, or we just do it and they have their masks on. But
Yeah, they will be able to use their.
okay,
Because passing is 3 minutes and it's the 10-minute, 15-minute rule.
all right.
And just having adults in the hallway monitoring, time.
But I think you're right, though. I think that should be in the list of, students will have this.
It is important.
I wasn't even aware that they weren't able to.
Carried everything all day.
So do we also know, because I know this at the end of last year, a lot of parents were wondering if they sent the computers back into the kids. Are the kids bringing the computers back and forth? Do we know yet?
We'll talk about.
I always just look at you, Elliot.
That's okay. You can look at me anytime you want. So again, we're equipped to have every child with every device home every day. Whether or not we mandate it, it might be grade by grade, it could be class by class. I don't know that it necessarily has to happen yet. I think as we go into the year, we're going to get a feel for it. Our pre-K and kindergarten kids are going to have devices. I'll show you guys a little bit later on that live here, but we're ready to send them. I think part of the policy conversation is also going to give us that time to get stuff home to kids. So if it's a 3-day, if it's a 5-day, if we keep it a 10-day, and that student doesn't have what they need, it gives us time to get them what they need, whether that's mom and dad come to get it, or however we need to get them what they need in terms of materials. So I think that there's a lot of layers of preparation to get us there. But I don't know that we want to say it's a blanket rule that everybody has to bring it home every day. I think that's more of it'll develop more organically.
Right, because I think that's a good, I'm sorry, I think it's just a good communication for the parents to say, like you guys have your computers, especially the kids going to different schools. So please bring them on day one, and you won't get one to go home, or you will, it'll be new. If we can let parents know that beforehand, like, my daughter's going from Elm to Alden, so should she bring her computer back to Alden, but she's gonna get a new one to keep and stay at home. Just because, with the little kids, those backpacks do get really heavy. I know that was. So just the more communication with parents before school starts, so they can find the computer.
And I think it's something we just need to also like monitor the trends in the area, right? Because
Yeah.
if we start looking at, you know, a serious scenario where it's closing in and numbers are rising very locally and we may be in a position where we had to go remote again, then we might make the choice to keep them going home because it's easier to get a couple of devices than it is to get all 800.
Maybe Fridays is a good idea to bring them home, just in case. you know.
Yeah,
That's
but I
the
think,
kind of stuff.
like, on day one, definitely bring your computer into school.
For sure, because we're gonna be doing some exchanges too.
That's my
in the
thought,
first
okay.
couple of weeks. So we definitely want all the devices to come back. I can't be more clear than that for those listening at home. Please bring the devices
Yeah,
back.
we should definitely send something out, because I don't know that everyone would instinctively know that, so.
Yeah,
Certainly.
I mean, it should be the entire list of, here's what it's gonna look like. You know, not just, bring computers home, don't, maybe yes, maybe, but, you know, they're gonna wear us, they're not gonna, all these things. And very simple bullets so that parents, there's no, well, does that mean that I'm not gonna be asked to, but I can if I want? We wanna make sure that they're not second guessing some of them. So normally, I don't open up a question and comment section from the public during these meetings, except for the one session. But I think the issues that we've been talking about, there's enough angst about it. There's enough, just concern over knowing. So I put in a second question and comment section. So Cheryl, do we have any? Right.
But it was a good thing to do.
Yeah. No, I want to give them a chance. All right.
I do have one question about busing, because I understand some parents might still be on the fence whether to put their child on the bus or not, and I know masks will be required on the bus. Will it be similar to June, whereby children not from the same household might be sitting next to each other? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
That can share seating on the bus.
Correct.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a couple things in there that we need more information on, but the vast majority of it is, as the attorneys say at school, it's ready to go. All right, so next part of our discussion is fund balance review. And for our new members, this is one of the, especially as we move forward towards hopefully doing some investment in the district. Fund balance is really important to understand. So with that, Mr. Fund Balance.
Good evening, everybody. So every second meeting of August, the board approves any increases to fund balance and to its reserves. So in preparation for the action that's going to take place later on, I thought it may be a good idea to do some version of a primer for those of you who have no familiarity with fund balance. And it's also just a good reminder for all those of you who do, because fund balance and reserves is a relatively complicated subject. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you. So I don't expect to digest all of it. And if you think of questions tonight, great. And if you think of questions off cycle, please feel free to throw them Laura's way. She'll throw them down to me, and we'll be happy to provide. So fund balance and reserves. Okay. So when you hear of fund balance, and definitionally, fund balance is really, it's what you would have budgeted both in your revenues and in your expenditures, okay? And anything that you take in your revenues above and beyond what you would have, what you budgeted to take in. that's going to go to fund balance. Anything that you budgeted to spend on the expenditure side, and if we were able to save 10 grand here, we were able to save 30,000 here, all of that at the end of the year would go to fund balance. And then you would decide, well, what exactly should our school district do with this fund balance? So a lot of people think about fund balance in terms of just that 4%. Everybody hears that 4% rainy day fund. Well, that's just our unassigned fund balance. There are other types of fund balances that comprise the entirety of our fund balance. So, and this is all by GASB, and it's a governmental accounting standards for, and they determine what types of fund balance we're allowed to have. So, non-spendable fund balance. Non-spendable fund balance, school districts generally don't have. We do have non-spendable fund balance in our cafeteria fund because we have we have a version of inventory that counts as fund balance. So anything, if we were to go in here and we were looking at the cages and all of any of the canned fruit and all that stuff, that needs to be audited and inventory. That's what we would call non-spendable fund balance in the cafeteria. But generally speaking, school districts don't have non-spendable fund balance to speak. So, in the cafeteria funds. So committed fund balance, another fund balance that school districts generally don't have. So the OSC has said that in general, local governments don't have a committed fund balance because you folks pass resolutions to reserve. And by definition, as a result of that, it would be a reserve, not a committed fund balance. So you won't see committed fund balances generally on our balance sheet. So assigned fund balance is absolutely something that we have, and we have different types of assigned fund balance. Generally, the assigned fund balance that we have is fund balance to offset the levy. So the board decides and says, listen, we have this amount of fund balance. We want to be able to offset our tax levy. So we have this money. Let's not make an additional impact on our taxes. And then we use assigned fund balance to be able to reduce the levy. We also have some special items. So you'll see that over the past 3 years, we had a significant mold issue. The board, in its wisdom at the time, said, you know what, we don't know how this is going to shake out. We don't know if it's going to be an insurance loss, if we're going to be able to use our insurance against it. We have the money, let's reserve. And that's what we ended up doing. You'll end up seeing in the next chart that why our assigned fund balance went up so much. But we also had our BOCES capital project. So all of Dutchess County voted on a referendum for BOCES. It was going to cost our taxpayers something. We knew it. We ended up being able to reserve for that, and our auditors said that indeed will work. So this also includes our reserve for encumbrances, and our encumbrances differ from year to year. And what you should know about our encumbrances is that that's everything that we are already in contract for, but did not yet receive an invoice. So we have to take the money in 1 year, we have to move it over to the next year and be able to expend it in that next year. So that becomes a type of assigned fund balance. So this is where we've been over the past 5 years with our assigned fund balance. And you'll see this in long-range planning, because what we end up doing is we then take our trends of where we've been with our fund balances and think about what our financial future is going to look like. So here you see we made a concerted effort to reduce our assigned fund balance to try to budget a little bit more tightly. Then this is our year of mold, I believe, where we went up to $2.1 million. We ended up getting about $2 million working with our insurance company and negotiating with them and having them understand why it should indeed be a covered event. So that money ended up coming back into our tills, if you will, later on, and we didn't have to spend that money for the renovation of Elm Drive. So after that year, after that year, we ended up just going to our assigned fund balance, and then we had our BOCES project come on. And this, you now see is just, again, our assigned fund balance. That's again, the money that goes to offset the levy, plus whatever we were going to pay for our BOCES project. And we chose, or I chose to talk about it in terms of assigned fund balance, not including our encumbrances, because that's just going to differ year to year, depending on how much of your contracts throughout that we just weren't billed for yet. Now we get into unassigned fund balance. So that's our 4% rainy day fund, if you will. And that's limited to 4% by real property tax law section 1318. So it used to be 2%, and then it was increased to 4%. And what the state says is you can have up to 4% as an unassigned, unrestricted fund balance. And that's, again, kind of your rainy day fund. So if we were ever in a position where we had to expend money and we knew that it was a one-time expenditure, we would probably want to opt to take it from here because it's a one-time expenditure. It's not built into the budget. We're not going to have to worry about finding that money over time.
But Brian, we were talking about those capital plans for my capital project, the 175, and how they might run over. This is a place that we could get that money to, if we wanted to cover the rest of it.
That would be a place where we could grab it, except for the fact that our taxpayers give us authorization to spend over $175,000 on that project. So we'll have to we would have to figure out a different and legitimate way to be able to come up with that, but that wouldn't be it because our taxpayers own direct those. So our assigned fund balance generally, you can see, follows a very straight slope here, because, as you would imagine it would be, because it's always a maximum of 4% of your ensuing year's budget. And this is where we've been over time. And this is what we are recommending that the board reserve in the unassigned fund balance for next year. You'll see if you're in the backup to the resolution in new business, these numbers are going to look very familiar to you because that's the recommendation of where we are going to suggest that you put the money for reserves in your fund balance management. And those recommendations come after the audit just happened last week. And the numbers are also approved by the auditor. So if you're comfortable moving in that direction later on, you'll know that those numbers are audited. Auditor. All right, so now we talk about our restricted fund balance, and these are the reserves that we're thinking that we know about. So we refer to them as reserves, but that's the section of fund balance that's a restricted fund balance. So the reserves that we're permitted to have is an unemployment insurance reserve, and the ones with asterisks are the ones that we actually have in place, whether or not they're funded. So right now, our unemployment reserve, we're suggesting, our retirement contributions reserve, there's actually two funds. One is our employees retirement system reserve. And then I'm going to say about 4 years ago, they approved our ability to have a sub-fund for the teachers retirement system. We are currently funding both of them, and we're recommending some increases to that.
But these are, again, just to make sure we're all on the same page, those like the unemployment insurance is something that's there if the wheels completely come off, we still have the money to pay for the unemployment insurance and for retirement contribution, right?
Yes.
For a certain period of time.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yes, and we haven't sought to do it just yet because we're in a good spot budgetarily. But it may be true that in future iterations of the budget, the board may say, well, you know what, we have our funds exactly where we want them to be. Maybe it's time to budget a little bit less and budget to use some of our reserves. And then we just have to be really careful about that and have a very specific plan, because there's going to be a cliff that's going to happen. You're going to spend all your money and then you're going to have a spike in your budget. So it have to happen. The reserve for a tax certiorari is, so we get challenges, and each of our 6 towns gets challenges to people's assessment all the time. Okay, so right now, people may say, well, my house is worth less than you say it is, and I don't, and we shouldn't be paying for as much taxes as you think we should. If a judge makes that so ordered, we need to be able to find that money. So we have a reserve for taxes. Our capital reserve, we've spoken about that reserve an awful lot. We're recommending that we go just about up to 7 of our 10 million by the end of this year. Workers' comp reserve, we have one of those. Generally not needed to be funded so much because we belong to a consortium. And right now on our books, our consortium is very, very well funded. So it would be really hard to defend putting money into that reserve. We don't have an LR, but we do have a compensated absence and accrued liability fund that we'll talk about. Reserve for property loss, reserve for liability claims, and an insurance reserve. So I'm going to say maybe 2 years ago, we implemented an insurance reserve, and we are recommending that we increase that insurance reserve based on the fund balance that we have. And you'll see that a little bit later on. But that insurance reserve is basically to be able to cover uninsured losses. So as an example, and I think this may be when we put it into place, let's say all of that mold that we had at Elm Drive was not covered, and we weren't able to prove that it should have been a covered loss. This reserve would have covered all of those losses. So it's just smart to have. And a reserve for repairs, which we don't currently have, and a reserve for debt, which generally happens when you, if you were to sell a building, there's money that goes into that reserve. So again, our total restricted fund balance comprises all of those reserves that we have together. So over time, you can see in the past 5 years, we have grown our restricted fund balance. We've grown our reserves, the legitimate savings that the Office of the State Comptroller allows us to have to protect the commissioner. We've grown that pretty significantly. And we are looking at being at about just shy of $11 million in our reserves. So just in the way of summary, non-spendable and committed, we generally don't have. School districts generally don't have. You're restricted, you're assigned, and you're unassigned is what we do have. And those comprise the entirety of our total fund balance. Restricted, again, is your reserves. Assigned is either for a particular purpose, but most generally our assigned fund balance to offset the levy. And then we have our unassigned fund balance or our floors. So just to give you a recent historical perspective on each of the fund balances, and this is going to set you up well to be able to understand what you're going to be approving in a couple of months. So our retirement contributions reserve. So when we started out our retirement contributions reserve, there was only one reserve fund that we were able to have, and that was for the employees' retirement system. Now there's 2, and there is a sub fund, and you'll see that in your backup for later on. And that's what we're recommending that we go to just shy of $1.6 million in that reserve. Then we have our unemployment reserve that we're recommending that we stay flat there. We did have so many more unemployment claims than we've ever had, as you would imagine. But interestingly enough, we've prepared to be able to pay them by use of a reserve. But then the state said, you know what, don't worry about it. The money that you sent in, we're going to give you a refund check. We found out about that later on. So we're recommending that we don't need to increase this reserve. Our tax certiorari reserve, you'll see how far down we are compared to where we've been in the past. And these come from higher amounts when we have a property like the Fountains, as an example, a multi-million-dollar property that ends up challenging what their assessment is. Then we find ourselves in a situation that if we want to protect our taxpayers, then we put money in this tax surplus. We don't have that situation now. We're opting to stay flat in our tax surplus. Our capital reserve, you'll see where we've been over time. The board put before the voters, and the voters gave us resounding approval to be able to go up to $10 million in our tax surplus reserve. We're recommending that we go to just shy of $7 million in our tax, in our capital reserve. This is our insurance reserve that we talked about, that whole mold issue. If it wasn't covered, it would have come from here. We're recommending that we add pretty significantly to our insurance reserve. And then for those of you who have been on the board, you'll remember our conversations. Well, what about our accrued liabilities? And our accrued liabilities, so we're permitted to have a fund that allows us to put in it money for up to 1 year of retiree health and compensated absences. So what's compensated absences? Our teachers get paid out for sick leave upon retirement if they meet certain restrictions or certain stipulations. So we were able to put compensated absences in there. And of course, the only other thing that we have in our accrued liabilities fund is we didn't get billed yet for our April through June employees retirement system payment. So that goes in there. Now, the one big drop that you see right here, this year, we had about $3.5 million. At one point, we had in excess of 4 years of retiree health savings. And that's when the auditor said, no, that's not okay. You need to do what you can to whittle down. And we did. We had a plan over time to whittle down. But then when we didn't need all of that money for the mold, we had different ways of being able to whittle that down more specifically. And in the board's wisdom at the time, we then made sure that we took on the auditor's recommendation to get down to an acceptable. So really, really important information for our own financial planning over time. And another reason why it's important is, well, why does it matter? So this is our Moody's investor service kind of rating that we get every single year. So why is it important? So if you see the highlighted portion, Millbrook CSD has a very quality credit position, and it's AA2 rating, slightly stronger than the U.S. School district's mean of a AA3. That's very important for us because anytime we go out to bond, we're in a position where we are going to get the best interest rates possible, and we're going to be able to set our taxpayers up for success when we now have an amortization schedule. They're going to be paying a heck of a lot less interest than we will principal, which they obviously would in any case, but we're in a very strong position. So overall, our district is, and this is again the Moody's Investor Service, has a solid financial position, which is only slightly unfavorable when compared to its AA2 rating. So this is something that over time we've worked to develop. We should be very proud of this, and our taxpayers should know that their school district, by all measures, is in an excellent place financially. Which would also be reiterated by the Office of the State Comptroller fiscal jeopardy report or something. That's not the word that I'm using my words, but we also have no issues there. So throughout this presentation, I've cited just a bunch of different resources that come from the Office of the State Comptroller and Questar, and so I can make sure the appropriate recommendations. The only thing that references and limitations. So the only thing I didn't share with you that if I were you, I'd be asking this question, well, why do we have so much fund balance? So particularly in COVID years, we have so much fund balance because last year we didn't spend 10% of our budget. 10% of our budget, that's extraordinary. We generally spend about 96% of our budget. So we have things, and I wanted to be able to remind myself, so I kind of did a spreadsheet of it. There's about $1 million in special ed that we didn't have to spend. $1 million. There is $750,000 in transportation. We worked really hard negotiating a contract with transportation and making sure that we didn't have to spend taxpayer money unnecessarily about that. $750,000 we did not spend on transportation. Athletics and co-curriculars that were not run, we didn't spend $223,000. So overall, we did not spend about 10% of our budget last year. So that's where we're. So what questions, if any, do you have? Again, if you don't think of them right now.
So Brian, if you can just sort of describe how the capital reserve folds into, because we also have to go to voters for the above and beyond money. Can you talk a little bit about how that process works? Like what is the capital reserve for versus, is it like the down payment? Is it, how does it fit in with the capital project that we go out and ask the public to approve?
Sure. So the capital reserve is one of the few reserves that requires voter approval on both ends, or on all ends. We are required to request of them to be able to save the money up to a certain amount. Then they entrust you with that dollar amount and you put it as you deem appropriate. But then you also have to ask them on the back end if you can spend it. And so those would be resolution-based resolutions that you would pass for propositions, and then propositions you put out to the voters, whether it be an off-cycle vote or during. And what we would do in our workshopping when we decide what type of capital project we're going to do, let's say there's $40 million of work that is determined needs to happen. And the board says, we want to be able to do $15 million worth of work. Oh, and by the way, we have our bank account of $7 million. Well, that's going to come off the top. And then we're only going to have to bond for $8 million. So what ends up happening is our taxpayers are only going to have to pay interest on that $8 million. So that's kind of how it works. Now, the board may choose to do something in iterations. Maybe they say, well, we want to use all of this and we want to be able to do a large scale capital project at no cost to the taxpayers. And we're going to use that $7 million for that. And then we know, by the way, in 2027, 28, we have another $300,000 of debt that's falling off because one of our bond payments is gone. So you would do this potentially in phase one. And then in phase two, you would back into a number. Well, if I'm going to make a $300,000 payment annually, if I back into and look at an amortization schedule over 15 years, because that's the life of a bond, how many $1 million of a project can I now do to make sure that our kids have the facilities that they need? Again, at no additional cost to the taxpayers. That's the important financial planning about keeping your budget level and not creating spikes for needed. So that's where it's.
I want to make sure we're all thinking the same direction.
May I answer anything else?
And we tried our best to say fund balance and reserve and balance and everything, and we just switch those terms randomly just to drive it down.
Ryan, you did say you wanted to increase the insurance, why?
Yes, because it's a legitimate, so the Office of the State Comptroller allows us to put money in certain spots in a legitimate way to protect our taxpayers. We now have, because of COVID, $3 million that we need to reserve. So that's one legitimate place to be able to. So they say every single year you can either put $33,000 or 5% of your next year's budget in an insurance reserve. It's just a
So
legitimate
you're
way
looking
to
for
be able to.
just legitimate places to park the money the extra.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah.
But why wouldn't you put it in the capital reserve? Or you're just, you got a little space over here, so fill it, and then whatever's left goes in the capital reserve.
Because you now have flexibility, the board now has discretion over what that does, what they do with that money in the insurance reserve in ensuing years. If you put it in a capital reserve, it does two things for you. If it's required to stay there until it's used, and it locks it, well, let me say it better, because that's not entirely true. It's for a particular purpose, for capital, and you also get closer to your $10 million threshold. So it just offers you some more doors that can remain open.
And see, part of what we need in this long-term financial plan, at least my take on it, is we're gonna get this project plan, like you described before. Maybe there's $40 million, but we can only really deal with, 15, but we want to do it 6 and 9. Being able to tie this project plan together with when debt is rolling off and when we think we'll have extra for, in the capital reserve, putting those two things together is, it just helps us really understand, not just this year and next year, but 3 or 4 or 5 years out. And if you've done a better job of planning for COVID, anything? I guess Chris didn't like the
You wanted
All
to
right.
ask if you thought the state was just gonna keep giving us money.
I can answer that.
Also, I'm gonna say the answer to that is yes, I do believe so. And because I do believe that they are going to fully fund the, and that's gonna be a really, really important building block for us moving forward. I do think, I know you said it in jest, but I do think that they're gonna fully fund the foundation formula. And I do, and listen, we didn't budget, we didn't know that we were absolutely going to get our peaking. That is gonna offer us flexibility. If they maintain that, we now have $140,000 in our budget that we're able to put elsewhere in ensuing years if they're gonna maintain their promise to educate 4-year-olds.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most bizarre coincidences I've ever seen in my life. If we'd done it a year ago, they said nothing, you get nothing, no. We wait a year and it's like, how was that? All right, any other questions for Brian or anybody on? Thank you, Brian. All right. Yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute break, 15 minutes?
I just gotta find the bed.
Let's press the hall.
Oh, press the hall.
Yeah. I think we're actually doing right well.
Nice.
Thanks.
That's right.
Still there? Hey, Paul.
I can hear you.
All right, man. All right, let's get back to it. Let's see. Technology plan. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Thank you all for having me tonight. Brief, I'm not going to read everything on the screen. A lot of this is excerpted out of the technology plan update that was sent to the board members before the meeting. So before we get started, I just want to clarify where we are in the technology plan process. Technology plans are required by the state of New York's Education Department on a 3-year rolling cycle. Our last formal technology plan was submitted to the state for the years of 2016 to 19. I got here in 2020, there was a little thing called COVID happening, we got a little busy, and we did not do a formal update to the technology plan at that time. But we did spend the better part of the last school year working through a plan update. The board had asked for an update on just where we are. We know that we are in a very different place from 2019, certainly since and through the COVID pandemic. And we wanted to take an opportunity to give the board a document that was reflective of the last tech plan with updates from the last 2 years and perspective into the next school year. We just received guidance after the composition of that update within the last month or so that the state will require us to go ahead and provide another formal document, a 3-year plan from 2022. It's going to be due June of 22, and it should cover 22 to 25. So what we're going to talk about tonight is really updating the board and the community on where we are from the 2016 to 19 plan as of year end of June 30, 2021. And we'll talk about our prospective plans for this coming school year, which are inclusive of drafting a new plan with the new guidance aligned with the structure that the state wants from us for the 22 to 25 year. And as we've discussed previously, my goal as your tech director is to provide the board with an annual update to that document, whether that's written or verbal. We don't want to let it sit for 3 years and then update it. We want to keep the board and the community informed as to what we're doing year to year, even though we're interim on a 3-year plan. So very quickly, our technology goals for the district are to align with curriculum. You're going to hear me say that a lot. We are kid first in everything we do, and technology is no different. We're going to establish a fiscally responsible plan for device plan. I don't know if you guys know this, but the things that you're sitting with in front of you, they go bad pretty quickly, and that quickly gets quicker every single year. We're used to the last 7 years. Now you're looking at the last 3 or 4. No different in the world we live in instructional technology. And equally important, we want to maintain a safe and secure digital learning environment. We're putting kids online, and online can be a scary place. We're putting them online more than we ever have before. We want to make sure that our kids are as safe in a digital online environment as they are in our physical buildings. So before we go real deep, I want to just take a moment and share with everyone who the technology committee was for the 2021 school year. It's a pretty extensive list. I'm really impressed with the cross-section of folks we got to join us. What's really important for me personally is every single administrator in this district participated in the technology planning process throughout, not just from reentry planning, but even our formal meetings every month. So every building principal, every central administrator was on almost every single call. We also had 2 members of the Board of Education join us, Mr. Rosenberg and Mr. Hartsman. Thank you guys for all of your input throughout the process. And we had our teachers union leadership also participating, as well as almost every building representative. So we couldn't be more excited about having the folks that were in on the planning process. We really wanted to get voices from every corner of the district, and I think we were able to achieve that. So thank you to all those folks that were involved. We have a technology vision, which was part of our last tech plan, and I just wanted to share it again for the folks at home. You can read it yourselves, but really the most important thing is that we're providing tools, technology tools for education. And I really, this is going to be a theme that you're going to see recur, right? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, technology was an add-on to education. It was like, okay, this is how we teach, and there's a new tech toy. Let's incorporate it into what we teach. And then last year, we got thrust into a world where we can't teach without technology. I'm not expecting that to perpetuate, but what I do expect is for us to align our technology plans with what we intend to teach and how we intend to teach. Technology is no longer that bell and whistle that accompanies instruction. It needs to be an underpinning line of instruction that follows the lead of instruction and not the other way around. We don't want to use tech to teach what we can because we have this tech but not that tech. We want to invest in technology because we want to teach this and we need the technology to teach it this way. So there's some accomplishments. There's a lot of things we did since that 2019 plan. So when I looked at the 16 to 19 plan, there was aspirations to introduce a one-to-one initiative in one building over a 3 to 5 year period. We blew that out of the water last year. In a matter of months, we went from K to 12 with a one-to-one initiative. It was piecemeal, it was a patchwork quilt, but we got it done. So we've also implemented tracking. So we have more devices than ever before. We have over 1,500 digital devices in this district between staff and students. We implemented work order systems for both facilities and operations and technology. So there's a full work ticket program there. Lots of professional development. We actually brought back the education technology specialist. And since that was brought back, we've rolled it into an administrative position that's even more expansive to not just deliver professional development, but design it with technology in mind, by and large. We've increased our infrastructure, again, because we had to, right? Everybody, we had to be able to broadcast our teachers out to our students and our students into our teachers. So that meant doubling our bandwidth capacity to the district. That meant making Elm Drive Elementary School completely Wi-Fi. And it meant bolstering our server and equipment that supports all of that digital learning in our main data closets as well. Full one-to-one. We've also upgraded our video management system. So that was a big project that we did district-wide. And I'll share more details on that with the board in executive session, as that is a safety and security conversation. We upgraded our firewall. We have remote desktops. So now our technicians can provide remote support to students and staff at home. That's something that we introduced during COVID, and we don't expect to pull that back. It's been very helpful for us, even on campus building buildings. We've updated our network administrative process and protocols for high-level auditing management, and I would say we've gone a step further. We actually established a subcommittee of this group comprised of administrators and board members to really provide high-level oversight as to how we do what we do in digital space and how we track what we do in digital space. And I think one of our biggest wins in the last couple of years is that we upgraded our Google account. So we used to be a Google for Education district. It was a free product that Google offered. There's so many benefits and upsides to the paid subscription service, like everything else in life, right? The paid stuff's never as good as the free stuff. But we made a decision as an administrative team with the support of our board to upgrade our status to Google Enterprise for Education. It opened up a lot of opportunities for our teachers and our learners. I think we're having some very positive results from it. Looking forward to seeing that expanding next year. We've established multimedia channels. If you're watching us at home, you're watching us on one of our new media outlets. Communications has been a big part of our tech planning for the last year and a half. We have not just those accounts, but we're also expanding our communication system. So we have Blackboard mass notifications. We have a mobile application that's branded to the district. We have a number of different ways to reach our students and staff at home, wherever they are. We've also added the IXL platform as a formative assessment tool that we've expanded to go full K-12. So we want to give our teachers an increased amount of tools to leverage their ability to not just provide instruction, but track the efficacy of that instruction. So, yes, sir.
Just and I don't want, please don't like go into specifics of it, but did we roll the audit into our procedures? And we had, I don't even remember the findings, and most of them were ticky-tack, in my opinion. But did we roll those into our regular procedures so that we're not doing passwords like we're supposed to, or not doing passwords like we're not supposed to?
I'm going to answer your question a little bit differently than it was phrased, but I would say that our password protocols are part of our audit response from the OSC's audit, and there have been corrections made to align us with the NIST framework and CIS standards. So we have stronger password protocols than we did a year and a half ago.
Is there a way for us to? I mean, that audit sort of came out of nowhere. That was bizarre, but it did find a few things that should be taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Do they have something that we can stay ahead of this? Like, oh, they've got a new requirement for, all transactions must be blockchain transactions or some crazy nonsense like that. Do we know, do we know who to work with and where they are? And
Yes.
how to get that information in advance?
Yes, so the Office of the State Controller, when they did our audit, told us that they are aligning, that their standards are aligned with this framework and CIS. They also have governmental standards that are somewhat aligned with what school districts do. So for example, their expectations for policy, for password security are by and large for like adult civil servants and not 5-year-old first graders. So we got, there is a little bit of flexibility there. When we speak in executive session, I can give you a little bit more detail as to what we did and didn't do. But anything that we didn't subscribe to was with reasons that were approved by them. So we have tightened up the ship, so to speak, in response to that.
And the last thing was, and maybe we should talk about the executive, but do we have proper insurance if we're attacked?
We can certainly get into the details a little bit later on, but yes, we have worked with Mr. Freed's office to acquire additional coverage for cyber attacks.
Okay.
So our technology committee goals were there was a lot. But obviously the first one is to review all the projects we had in progress, develop our goals for every building at every level. And you'll hear us talk about some buzzwords that come around the last couple of meetings. You'll hear them going forward about personalized learning, differentiation. So we want to differentiate our technology plans by building, by grade level, so that every learner gets what they need at their level, right? We don't expect a Swiss Army knife, one size fits all device for everybody, or protocol for everybody, or program. And we want to create a long-range replacement cycle. So the board has heard me speak of this in previous meetings, right? These things go bad, we need to have a plan in place to replace them cyclically. And if I do it in such a way that I buy 850 devices in one shot and then don't buy any for 3 or 4 years, somebody's gonna get really mad at me. Probably sitting really close to me. But the plan is really to space out what we need. And it's challenging to do that when you're buying things in chunks, right? So I bought over 500 devices in the last 6 months. I don't want to buy that many in any given year unless I absolutely have to. So we start to spread out, which means we may do some replacements a little bit prematurely, and we may do some replacements on a little bit of a delay. But in the next 5 to 7 years, I want to get us to a place where we're in a very comfortable, predictable replacement cycle for not just the tangibles in front of us on the table, but also the stuff in the back of the house that we don't see. We want to create an updated review process for instructional software selection. What that means is I got inundated with requests, what I need because of COVID, and it makes sense, right? Teachers were looking for ways to connect with kids through this new medium, through this new method that they had not done before, this new modality that was so foreign to us. Some of that stuff was really cool. We want to keep it. And so I'm working with our central administration. This year was the first year, I think in a while, that myself, every single building principal, and our deputy superintendent sat down and went through every single piece of software we subscribe to or purchase. We're creating a comprehensive list where it doesn't matter if we bought it through this COSA or that BOCES or this vendor. We want one master list. And now our new administrator who's in charge of professional development and analytics is looking at that list and looking for redundancies and looking to eliminate things that are repetitive. So we really get the best products in the hands of the right teachers.
And have we expanded for pre-K? I remember this is probably 3 years ago we went to NISBA or 2, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they had like a lot of sensory stuff for like pre-K kids. Have we started looking into tech for pre-K?
Why don't you mention that, sir?
Oh, cool.
This right here is a touchscreen Chrome tablet. These were purchased for all of our pre-K and kindergarten learners. So as we talk about personalized learning and differentiation, it also makes a really nifty kickstand. But again, this was selected with Caroline and Mr. Sotero's input from Elm Drive. We sat down and went through every single thing that we teach our youngest learners. Right? We went through the curriculum and selected a device that did all the things we needed to do. So this, with the right size stylus, can replicate a lot of the fine motor skills and handwriting techniques and things that little kids need to do. Because honestly, as much as we all want to be past COVID, I'm that guy that has to remind everybody that we're still in COVID, and I might have to send everybody home with these nifty little toys. We want our little learners to be able to function at a high level.
But there's also the whole issue of, there are kids that have, you know, I know 5 of them specifically, that are on iPads from the time they're 2 years old. You know, before they can speak, they're swishing their fingers. And then there's kids that probably don't get to touch it until they see that.
Exactly.
And getting them off on the same level, to me, is one of the most important, whether, no matter what the subject is, getting them off on the same level within, you know, by using pre-K is what that program is all about.
And I would say I agree with everything that you just said. It's so critical that every one of our learners, and not just our youngest learners, but some of our kids have $3,000-4,000 MacBook Pros at home, and some of them are trying to do a book report on mom's hand-me-down iPhone 6, because that's what they have available. So part of our mission is to give everybody a viable tool, regardless of grade level, that's going to work for what they need. And this is our first foray into differentiation. This little guy here has got a bounce me off the floor case. Not that I'm recommending that, but it is a pretty thick, dense foam case. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to lose the value of the analog learning styles. So we're looking for digital devices that replicate but not replace. And I thank Carolina and Mike for really helping us drill down. Whatever you buy needs to do this, 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 and this. And it's just, it's a thought process that we're fostering amongst our entire team. We'll pick the thing, just tell us what it needs to do. And really leading with what the kids need first and working backwards from it. And last but certainly not least is education law 2B compliance, right? Data privacy. The more kids we put online, the more stuff we put online, the more things we keep in the cloud. There's a heavier onus on us to keep that stuff secure and safe. And whether it's our children's interactions online or the data we track them with, we need to make sure everything's compliant. It's a big part of what I do every day. It's not a fun job, but it's very much an important part of times.
And one of the things I think it was David brought up in an email was dating, or having expiration dates on pretty much anything we put out there, so that we make sure, you know, hey, I put this document out there in 1982, and and I forgot all about it. People are looking at it and going, "Oh man, you know, really carving things in stone." Huh? I mean, do we have the ability to not only do that, but to actually audit it and make sure that it's staying current?
Yeah, it's a bit more involved because we use multiple platforms, but we're working that problem right now. And also, we're working that issue to make sure that we can insulate our content and keep it the integrity of our content where it needs to be. Because if we're here, the last thing we put online is over here, then we're missing out on the whole lot. So it is something that we are actively working on across all platforms, the Google platform, the Blackboard platform. So we had some goals I want to specify, and again, I don't need to get into the detail of this, just know that everything we're doing is with our kids first. So we lead with instructional support, that's where we start. If we don't get that right, everything else kind of doesn't really matter as much. When it comes down to digital device differentiation, replacement cycles, so I want these new things, we're going to see how they work in the fall. We're going to use that same analytical model to look at every single building. So it may make sense that we buy these for everyone, not just our pre-K and kindergarten. We don't really know until the rubber hits the road. We have to really look at what our high school students need versus what our Alden students need. So that differentiation conversation is going to be a big part of our work this year. Classroom configuration and design. We had to move a lot of stuff around for COVID protocols, and it wasn't just for social distancing. We needed to be able to create viewing angles, proximity for the teacher to the smart board so they could broadcast their content. We had to add screens so they could watch their own at-home learners. So as the instructional process evolves, we're looking at physical spaces, not just the toys we put in those spaces. And that's why I've been working very closely with Mike Ragusa, work with Brian to figure out how we plan for these things, and our whole instructional leadership team on what they need in the rooms. But a lot of this is walking around classroom to classroom and just talking to our teachers. What do you guys need to enhance what you do? Right? We want to give them tools to support their work, not just restrict them by what we have available. And so you're going to see interactive software and hardware. Smart boards themselves are aging out. Is that the best tool for the job? We're going to figure that out. Student engagement and mixed modality, social emotional learning supports. We had some students that struggled with remote and hybrid learning. We had some students that did really well with it. And so I think part of the process is not just you know, well, we're not in COVID anymore, so we can abandon all of that craziness and bring them back into full-time learning. But what about that pocket of learners that did really well in an online environment? How can we capture the positives of those experiences and proliferate them going forward so that other students like them can do equally well in person? And again, cybersecurity, technical proficiency for all staff. And training is a big deal, right? We had emergency training sessions for teachers during the COVID pandemic. We want to be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional about how we teach teachers to leverage technology in their classrooms. Infrastructure plans, we talked a little bit about communications, internet safety, cybersecurity, competing, non-instructional supports. This is a big one for me. Just getting our databases to talk to each other. We have a lot of places we store information. They don't all play nice together. What I thought was going to be a 2-month project became a 6-month project, and it was really down to getting one database to speak to another one effectively. Had 4 different people on conference calls constantly. But it's not effective until we make it function that way seamlessly. So that's a big priority for us next year. I talked a little bit about the eliminating redundant softwares. If 3 things do the same thing, I don't need all 3 things. It's a waste of taxpayers' money and we need to eliminate. We brought a lot of things in because we had to. It's time to start trimming and paring down and prioritizing. We're going to work with our instructional teams to do that. Again, school safety, community outreach and engagement. So that's another one, right? We created avenues for parents to communicate with teachers, administration. We had virtual parent conferences, right? Exactly. So there's been already talk about, do we keep the virtual parent conference model? Do we go with a hybrid model and offer virtual? I mean, we're thinking about those folks that may work the clock, they may have second shift jobs, they can't get here at night, but they can take 20-minute break, jump on a computer and talk to a teacher. So if there's ways to engage not just our students, but their families, using all these tools and techniques we acquired, how do we maximize that, take it to the next level, and really improve our connection with our people? So, budget. I'll say it briefly. We spent a lot of money we didn't plan. We're gonna do better moving forward. Hopefully we don't have to do that again. Thankfully, the board supported us buying a lot of big ticket things, right? So we fully outfitted out and drive. It's done. I'm gonna have to replace it at some point. It'll be off cycle with the rest of the district. So that's gonna roll into a long-term replacement. The same with every device we bought, the same with all of our software. We have different funding sources available. So I just wanted to remind the board, we still have about $340,000 in Smart Schools Bond Act. That, as part of a master facilities plan, for example, as discussed earlier, could help with a heavy lift of the project. So it's a drop in the bucket on a $10 million project, but anybody who doesn't need $340,000 can send it to my house and I will certainly take care of it. So we don't want to ignore all of the funding options we have. We're doing an E-rate project this year for about $77,000. Again, that's money that we're not asking taxpayers for. We're getting it from the government. So we're just wanting to remind the board that we're being mindful of all the different ways that we have funding to be able to do these things. So our aspirational goals is, again, device differentiation. I talked about that a lot. Learning environment outfitting and utilization, including outdoor spaces. Thank you to the board, again, for supporting our first outdoor learning space up at the athletic complex. We have wireless access points to support multiple classrooms simultaneously in our bleacher grandstands and the areas surrounding. Our administrative team has taken advantage of it already this summer. We've had some of our meetings up at the field just to be able to breathe outside and be distanced and be able to be on our computers and be really productive in a fresh air environment. So if we can do it, it's great for us, it's great for kids. We just wanted to test drive it. It's been phenomenal. We were able to use that new system to live stream graduation, middle school move-up day. We're going to use that same program to be able to stream out soccer games and anything else we do on the field. But that's something that's scalable. I can bring that to every building, to every courtyard, to the playgrounds. We can start to look at establishing outdoor learning spaces for our kids. We have the infrastructure to do it, to build out and expand to be able to accomplish that. We also want to look at our indoor spaces. So we have a number of computer labs that were decommissioned this summer. We made a decision after some lengthy conversations that if every single student has a Chromebook, do I really need 30 Dell PCs in a lab? And is it worth spending $2,000 of taxpayer money per unit, 50, 60 grand in the room, when the kids all have a device in their back? Now, at some point, the answer to that may be yes. But right now, without a definitive yes, we're not comfortable making that financial commitment. So that's money that gets recaptured and put back into the other things we need to spend on. So we started with our elementary building. We're not taking anything apart up in the middle school or the high school. But at Elm and Alden, we made the decision that those spaces don't need to function that. One of the things that we're gonna work on as a team is what do we do with those spaces? Are there other things we can outfit them with that complement the one-to-one initiative? Maybe a more specialized equipment for a more specialized purpose. But absent of that direction, we just didn't feel it was prudent to spend that money at this time. We're gonna look to expand our building systems. We're working with Mr. Ragusa to start looking at smart building technology. Again, as part of our master facilities planning conversation, the lines get really blurry between my side of the house and Mr. Ragusa's side of the house. And we want to be able to support each other that way, so that if we have to open up a wall for whatever reason, I may need data cables put into it, we may want to run new lights, and we're gonna look at all the opportunities to make our buildings smarter, more efficient, and at the end of the day, better operating quality at a lower cost. So our next steps going forward for this year, I just wanted to share the timeline as communicated to us by the State Education Department. We have to submit our updated technology plan by March 4th, 2022 to BOCES. So every month that our tech plan meets, we're going to hit one of our big ticket items and start to rebuild the plan. We're going to use the new framework, which hopefully looks a lot like the old framework, just so it's not so foreign to everybody, to make sure we give the state what they need, but that we specialize the document for what we need and what we want. So it goes to BOCES on March 4th. BOCES will submit it April 8th, and by June 30th, the Mid-Hudson Regional Information Center will submit it to NICET. I'm very hopeful that those dates stay fixed, but that's not always the case. We want to be ready for it in March. Whether they expand the dates or not really our call, but at least we want to be ready for it. So the draft update that I gave you folks is going to be the foundation of that. We spent a lot of time tweaking it, so we're just going to really align that to the new stuff and then update it with this year's information. And then we'll figure out through our committees, through our conversation with the board, what after that, 22, 23, 23, 24, what the board wants to see in terms of documentation to reflect the updates to that.
One thing, and I didn't see it in there, but maybe it was, the work that you guys have done, and shout outs to Rick on like broadcasting with basketball games, things like that. One of the things that to me is like separates Millbrook completely from other schools is our arts and music program. I would love to see, I don't know, you guys, you probably don't even know who he is, but Bjorn McCalkin, ever since the COVID started, once a week he does a concert online and you can just sign in and watch it. I would love to see our kids, you know, the jazz band broadcasting concerts out there and arts programs, broadcasting art shows. And I didn't see it in the plan specifically called out, but it's sort of the same thing, only it needs to be a lot smoother. I mean, watching a basketball game is kind of like, you know, like that.
Yeah.
But listening to an arts, you know, like the jazz band play, I mean, you want that the sound to be crystal, you want the visual to be crystal. But I just like you to keep that in mind.
Certainly. I mean, so the first thing we needed was infrastructure, right? We needed the broadband cable. We had it. Thank you to the board for supporting that. We upgraded our bandwidth. We also added the capability to broadcast camera streams from the field and from the gym. We can add that now and scale it into the auditoriums. We can scale it into other areas. The facilities committee did talk about some outdoor activities potential at Elm Drive. So one of that conversation was like, okay, is technology part of this? Putting streaming capability in it. So I think it's starting to permeate all of our discussions.
I mean, even indoor though. I mean, it's not even because of COVID. I mean, there's so many people I think would love to see, you know, grandma and grandpa and, you know, Uncle Joe want to see what those kids can do. And after you see what those kids can do, it just, I mean, it's amazing. So if we can just, personally, I'd love to see that stay in the plan somewhere.
For sure. For sure. I think it does tie in with our instructional goals. It's extracurriculars. It all plays into that conversation. We can certainly keep it forefront. So just, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the tech plan because that was a big part of what was asked of me to share tonight, but I did want to discuss on some other stuff that's been happening. We talked about the audit already, so thanks for jumping ahead on that one. I'm not going to cover that now. We are finishing up our video management upgrade. I will share more details on that with the board in executive session. We upgraded all of our physical and virtual servers this year. We are working on the last of those this summer. We've upgraded our informant cast, so we're in the process of doing that. What that is that's our notification system for lockdowns and lockouts. We expanded that protocol. I can give you folks some details on that a little bit later on as well, because it is a building safety and security issue. But also this summer into the fall, we're going to be upgrading our voice over IP phone system. So again, a large scale system. We're leveraging our E-rate money this year as part of that. We're going to be replacing all the phones in the district and then immediately putting into that replacement cycle. So this is like one of those things we talked about. Every time you do a large scale replacement, we need to start at the day you buy it, start planning for the day it's going to go bad, and be able to budget accordingly to get to the place where we can replace it without coming into the board and saying, I need X dollars, because we want to be very intentional. So that's what I got for you. Any questions, comments? Anything I can go over further? Yes.
The Smart Schools Bond Act funds, is there like a time limit on when we have to, like, I know the money that we got from COVID, we got it like dates, and I know things like that. Is that something that we have to show where we're gonna spend it by such and such a date?
I don't believe so, Mr. Freeman, you know.
No, so you might remember, geez, I'm gonna say it was maybe 6 years ago.
Then
maybe a little bit
no,
more.
don't.
Okay. So we had to vote in November, our regular vote, they put up a bond referendum to be able to fund school district in the smart school money. We had to vote, it was a governor's initiative. So our allotment of that was $340,000. We've had some conversations here about what we want to be able to do with it. And the thing that bubbled to the top at the time was a generator. And we got permission from SED to be able to use that money for a full building-wide generator, because we were saying that we were able to, our main closet is in this district, we were able to preserve all that equipment using. So that's what we talked about. We had 2 iterations of E-rate money that allowed us to do major projects using a 5-year cycle of E-rate money in 1 year. And we've opted in 2 different iterations to be able to use that E-rate money instead. There has been no indication that this money belongs to us, as far as I know. It's money that was committed by the governor to us. There is no evidence at all that money disappeared. So, but as soon as we are ready, and as soon as we want to submit an investment plan, that's a smart bond investment plan. And smart schools.
Smart schools bond. So, and is it almost like, the funds that you just went over that, I think after 3 years, I finally understand. Is it like you can only use it for certain, it can only be used for certain things? Like, we couldn't fix a sidewalk outside.
Correct. Correct, yeah, that has very specific requirements.
Unless we're putting smarter signs.
I need to get smart.
And at the time, it was that we were able to use it for devices, if we needed it, we were able to use it. We thought about connectivity, we thought about infrastructure, we thought about, and at the time of the board was excited about the idea to be able to do a generator, and then we just put that on hold. That full block.
Thank you.
Elliot, I have 2 questions. Okay, and perhaps Caroline might need to help me with this too.
Very okay with it.
Okay. Are there, both of these relate to aligning the curriculum, but also safety. For the younger children, but even some of the older children, are there plans, or if it's been done, I've missed it as a parent, to educate the children and the parents on proper technology use pertaining to their grade level and internet safety and and proper email. Because, I mean, one example is, last year, my 2nd grader was receiving emails. I never even told him that there was such a thing. And the prior year, when we had to go into sudden lockdown, March through June, my daughter had to quickly learn as a third grader how to email, and I had to teach her. And I just thought, there should be some type of teaching from administration regarding that, and those are
So,
that's my first question.
okay, so I'll talk tech first and then I'll let
Okay.
the curriculum piece. So this was new for a lot of, all of our youngest learners, right?
Right.
We didn't even have email accounts set up for some of our youngest students, and then we had to quickly generate them and put them out.
Right.
We have been very restrictive with our students' access to the outside world of digital space, both in website navigation and in email. So currently, our students do not receive emails outside of our Millbrook CSD building.
Right.
We're looking at opening that up for our older students as their needs dictate and have dictated. We've also stopped people from being able to access their personal accounts on our devices. And we've blocked more websites than we ever had. And we're doing that categorically and then opening them up specifically. So what that means is we're going to block all gaming platforms. But if there's an instructional gaming site that has been approved by the building principal and our deputy superintendent, then it gets green lit specifically for that website. So we're tightening up security all the way around to protect our kids from those outside influences, both through personal correspondence and through incidental or accidental navigation. That's the first thing. That was done as a scramble effort because in COVID, we were giving access to kids in never had.
Right.
So I don't care what wants to do our curriculum plans going forward in that direction.
Yeah, sure. So, part of a much larger curriculum rewrite, we're actually looking at all of our curriculum and realigning the state standards, some of the state standards, our next gen standards, are coming in. So some of them have been delayed because of the pandemic, so we're really kind of going to make everything safe, but really fine for some of these discussions. Like Elliot was saying, we never even thought that our youngest learners would need to be able to do these types of things at that age. And then we were thrust into this pandemic world where we needed to rely much heavier on technology than ever before, right? So yes, we're currently as an overlay to all of our other curriculum events, looking not just for technology skills that they need to have at each grade level, looking for a phase-on progression. Some of them are naturally embedded, where a student might learn a particular thing might really lend itself to, the ELA, et cetera. But there's also technology standards that we also need to make sure that our students, whether it's embedded in other curricula, that they're able to learn these skills, or like you're saying, be able to teach them explicitly about, being safer and have safe use of that and the etiquette, all of that stuff. So yes, we are looking at all of that, and much of that was done embedded in certain things, like in their library class technology, we were doing that. Some of that had been previously done. Some of it was also done for parents at Family University. It's not really ever well attended. So, like Elliot was saying before, one of the things that we've seen as a benefit is sometimes we can get greater attendance at the virtual meeting. So we're hoping on running some of the family view through virtual meetings so that, even if while you're cooking dinner, maybe you could attend, an online presentation that might inform you about something like that. So yes, we have.
Record it too and put it on our channel now, right?
And that was
Say
part
that
of
again?
You could record it and then keep it on our channel.
Yeah. So additionally, also with some of our, the PD drops in terms of technology, how-to videos, we're also looking at cataloging some of that to be able to retweet it, people can go back and look at it.
And thank you. And my second question is there a code of conduct that parents can read, students can read if they're older, related to technology?
So we do have an acceptable use of technology policy. It is on our website. And every student, when they get their device, the student and the parent sign off on that policy. Should. So if you signed a piece of paper when you got your student's Chromebook, it probably had that language in it. And we're going to be pushing that out this summer as part of some events.
I remember that one.
I'm sure in the stack of things you autographed and pushed right past, it was in there, I promise.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more of my first question, less of learning a specific technology for academics, but taking it down to the foundation of, okay, a child might know how to email a parent, a grandparent, a friend, but what they email outside of school, right, in their language and their etiquette may be very different than what we should be expecting them to email to a teacher or amongst each other.
A lot of that is in that digital citizenship kind of umbrella that we're gonna be teaching as well. And we do have digital tools as well. So we have a phishing education program for our staff that we're looking to expand to our students, where all of our users get a suspicious email intentionally. And if they react appropriately, they get, kudos. And if they don't, they get notified that you probably shouldn't have clicked that, and here's why. So there's some educational things we've been doing for staff for a couple of years. And now that we have all of our little ones online and getting emails, and these are part of the conversation, like how do we best teach them? So that it's almost like a real tangible lesson, right?
Right.
You got an email from somebody you don't know, what do you do? And so that's, these are all things that we're working in the planning process.
That's great, thank you.
Sure.
Question. When you're talking like the curriculum stuff, and I'm sure because of COVID, like I know, I can only base it off like what my daughter had, like Epic online and there's the math one or something, extra math, which I even tried doing. Like, is that stuff that you guys, so like I just know, for instance, because it was timed, a lot of kids had like issues doing it. And they said, okay, instead of that, do flashcards. Are those the things that you guys like reevaluate every so often and look to see? We're getting a lot of complaints from parents about, this one because it does or doesn't do that. To see if there's better ones suited for that.
Yeah, so some of it honestly came about because during COVID, we were able to set up some additional accounting softwares, web-based instructional tools, and needed to because our whole world changed. And some of it, like we had said, we're finding redundancy and maybe don't need to carry it. And some of it actually had been funded through different sources, and we're trying to streamline all of that so that there's literally nothing that's happening without being first vetted in the building by a principal, then through my office and with Elliot, so that we are keeping from having the redundancies. And if there is a program that David really likes because it does this one thing, but we also have this other program who can do all that and more, then Victoria will be doing some PD to make sure that those that are very comfortable with one tool that we're not retaining, see how they can do the same or similar on another tool. So we're working through all of that. Some of it was less restricted this year than we hope to be in the future because we really don't know how this year is going to play out. It's very unpredictable right now with numbers rising and stuff. So we have to prepare for the worst, right? And some of that means retaining some technologies that we wouldn't necessarily need to continue to carry in the future if everybody's back in school full time. Less concern of any other possibilities.
I honestly have to compliment you guys because the difference between 7-8 years ago and now in the transition from Elm to all the middle school, that was a brutal transition for those kids because it was sort of completely different, when they got to the new one. And it wasn't just, hit a bigger thing and you got lockers. There was a lot of, well, we don't do that way. And a lot of that has been changed very specifically and very intentionally changed. And the more we can do the same thing with technology so that, as they're growing up, they don't have to worry about, oh God, I got to learn this new system now to do division because, that's the way it goes. Right? But you know what I mean? So the more you can do that, I think, because it has made a huge difference.
We even talked about just as recently as today, incorporating the technology skills, with employability skills, something that can build up to like a capstone project senior year. You know, something similar to like that senior explore project, being able to make sure that our students are armed with all of those skills that will help them in the workforce, at least, you know, entry. And being able to ensure that they have at least the skills, this is something we talked about, being able to have at least the skills up to get like the level 1 certification review, right? So if all of our kids graduated with like minimal skills that they have the G Suite mandated as, you know, 12th graders, I feel like that's a great place for them to grow to.
And knowing freshmen in college, they're expected to know, they're not supposed to be experts in it, but, you know, my engineering students are expected to know how to program in Python. They're, you know, to get at it. They're not expected to be wizards at it. They're expected to know, you know, that what it is and how to use it. So the more we can do, you know, not just transitioning from school to school, but school to the outside world, whether it's, you know, blue collar, military. I mean,
That's what it is. We want to give our kids a skill. These kids that are coming in are digital natives. They grow up with technology. Like you said, Perry, they got iPads in their hands, some of them from 2 years old. Right? So, yeah, it's not enough to take our 15-year-old lesson plans and adjust them for more technology. It's to reinvent them in a way that leverages the technology that the kids are wanting to give with, giving them new skills and new tools while they're with us, change how they learn and grow, and become viable and competitive in that market wherever they go. Whether it's secondary education, whether that's higher ed, whether that's the, you know, technology fields, career fields, military, whatever they decide to do, we want to give them not just the basics, we want to have them competitive, ready to go, and bring these skills forward to their next phase of their lives after work.
so to summarize, you're not going to ask for a lot of money.
Never said that, won't say that.
Anybody, any other questions for
No,
Ellen?
that was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
President, Vice President's report.
Yep. So as the board's aware that I'm also the legislative contact, liaison, contact person. And I'm also advocacy group for his group there, legislative. So as part of this, I'm in the process of doing some research or digging, good old fashioned, digging into something that may have implications not only for students in this district, but in New York State and possibly national and national level. So I reached out to Senate or U.S. Senator Kristen Gillibrand, who happens to be on the subcommittee, which I am, which this may affect. So I will give more information once I do some more fact finding. This is a proper term. So I reached out to Senator Gillibrand back in July. Tried getting early July, tried setting up an appointment in her Albany office with one of the staff people to take place on August 11th. Now, it's unlike the good old days, I guess, when you used to be able to physically telephone their offices. Now everything's online. So they now have a scheduled request form at Gillibrand Senate. And I filled out all the forms and the information and everything else. And lo and behold, I heard nothing back. So then I followed up with another email following the scheduling request and spelled out that I had contacted her office, blah, 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 blah. This was a week before this supposed meeting. You know, I'm not gonna take a ride to Albany, but I don't hear it. Oh, nothing back. So I then telephoned at Monday before August 11th, the Albany office of Senator Gillibrand, and received not even a, who have reached the Albany office of Senator Gillibrand. No, I just get a voice that says, the party you have dialed cannot take your call. Leave a message. So I found that odd. So I left a message and heard nothing back. So next day, this was now sort of Monday, called on Friday before the 11th. So I called on Monday before the 11th, it was a Wednesday, and called Washington office. This time I did get a voice mail that did identify this was the office of U.S. Senator Christian Gillibrand, and I left a detailed message and heard nothing back from that. So it's one thing to blow, for them to just ignore me, or it's quite another thing for their office to blow off every parent and student in this district, which I am trying to act on behalf as the very low level, and this is a low level elected official. So I am quite upset about following their procedures, Senator Gillibrand, and then receiving just the brush-off treatment. I did research online that U.S. Senator Gillibrand receives $174,000 base pay to be a U.S. Senator. And I'm not asking to meet with Senator Gillibrand. I wanted to meet with one of her low-level office staff to start my fact-finding on behalf of the Millbrook Central School District. I know that they're, quote, doing the people's business up on Capitol Hill, but it's quite obvious at this point that they're not doing the business of the community and students for Central School District. So I will send an old-fashioned letter to Senator Gillibrand and see if that does anything on that. I did contact the NISBA legislative person. Said that yes, getting a hold of Senator Gillibrand's office is quite challenging. Now, if NISBA is having problems with her office, I don't know who she's representing, but she's not representing us. So I did reach out to our congressperson for this district, Antonio Delgado, and I'm trying to set up a meeting in his Kingston office with some of his staff to fact find on this issue. I did go over with NISBA this issue, so they're aware of it. But tomorrow there is a NISBA virtual meeting with Congressmember Delgado that will take place at 10 o'clock in the morning. And 15 people statewide that are also the separate board advocacy liaisons, legislative liaisons will be taking part of it. I will be one of the 15 taking part of it. I will make sure I get a contact person and real phone number from Mr. so I can make sure I can meet with him in his office. And that's where I'm at this point. Legislative advocacy for the district, and I will keep you advised.
Let us know. I mean, if you think it probably will do about as much good as a phone call, but if we put a letter from the board to those two and made it public record, like put it in the paper or tell the paper about it, let them take it off as a public, it is public information. Let us know. I mean, let me know, let the board know if you want us to put together a letter.
let me follow this through, but you know, there was a day, maybe 20 years ago, that we would have to physically pick up a telephone, and somebody, a live person would pick up. We would just go immediately with voice. Now it's a, you know, you follow their scheduling request, their questions, and you don't even get an acknowledgement. Like, you know, go away, they're too busy, well, representing people. But I will. Thank you.
Very good. Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. I just have a couple of points because Caroline's doing the heavy lifting and recording this evening. The first one is always a shout out, and the shout out is to our principals. You and your teams have been working all summer, programming, scheduling, hiring, and planning for the 21-22 school year. So I just want to thank you for your hard work and commitment to always creating an engaging and welcoming environment for all of our Blazers and all of our staff members. So thank you. Doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you. I love
Secondly, the Board of Ed always does a walkthrough before school opens. We can do it in pairs or threes, but no more than 4 because that's a quorum. And I didn't know how you would like me to coordinate that.
No more.
No more than 3, sorry. 4 is a quorum. Thank you.
So what we've always done is we've had 3 people basically walk each of the buildings. And just, you know, look over the conditions, you know, for opening day.
What 2 separate?
Or 2 separate persons. I don't know whether who's interested in doing that. You know, it's as much about looking as it is about talking and listening and what should be done next. But I'd like to be able to schedule 2. What's the first day of school? 8th. So what do you guys think as far as yeah, usually we do it on Thursday, but in the afternoon. Or was it like 3 o'clock, something like that, 4 o'clock?
We were flexible with whatever was good for folks.
Okay. So first of all, are you guys interested in doing that? So suppose we did one on the 19th. We either do 19th and 20th, or we could do 19th and 26th.
This week, I mean,
This
Is that, no,
Oh.
yeah, you're right. Never mind. So we could do August 26th. And we could do September 2nd. If we wanted to do them a week apart.
I will be at Washington, I'll be in Washington State on the 26th, but.
Okay. So if we did one on the 20th, I mean, on the 2nd.
Are we going to be prepared, Mike, with this?
Okay, so 20. 23rd. Oh, no. Yeah.
Email out the sign up or something.
Yeah, why don't we do that? So for sort of first come, first serve, you get, you know, we'll take 3 on the 26th, 3 on the, whatever I said, 2nd, 3rd. And yeah, and that should work. Is that all right? Like 4 o'clock? Is that okay with you guys? Or, so, and you want to cut it and try to push it a little later? Okay, Jen says she's on.
Jerry, did you say 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Because what it said, right? Oh, you want to do 3 o'clock? Is that?
I'm just asking. It's good for everyone.
I'm just trying to minimize the amount of time people have to take off to come
Oh,
to
right,
these
right,
things.
yeah.
So could we do it on the 20, I mean, at 4 o'clock? Is that okay?
So that's the August 26th and 22nd.
Right. No, August 26th and September 2nd.
Oh,
Right.
For our new board members, I know that normally the boards are set up to minimize, maximize. So that you can see the most of every building that you may go into, but feel free to say, no, I'd like to go down that hall or go off the beaten path.
Bring rubber boots. I mean, it's your chance to see, what it's all gonna look like on day one. And keep a list if there's stuff that you think,
There's always something
the questions or concerns.
your eye will catch that obviously somebody else's eye.
All right. Okay.
Also,
and just to put it on your radar, I know when I first got here in district, we continue to talk about data, what kind of data, why do we have a flow chart? Why do we have data coordinators? Why do we have district data coordinators? Why do we have data compliance coordinators? Why are we using different systems? How are they talking? Why aren't they talking? So we now have a strong core force in the administrative team, and we've added, as Elliot said, Victoria Curry, who is our supervisor of data analytics and professional development. And she is one to be reckoned with. She's quite a force and knows her data. And so thinking about maybe sort of mini lessons around data, how are we using data? How is it collected? How is it organized? How does it flow to state requirement? How do we use it to inform instruction? So Carol and I have been talking about some possibly like mini lessons for the board to sort of inform you about the data that we use and why, and working with Victoria and creating that space for you, that informational session where you can ask questions, but we can also give you foundational information over time. It's not a large presentation, but it's an ongoing conversation that we have with you. So just want to put that on your radar. And then,
We also, from the very start, beginning, from me being on the board, we've heard these, well, this person puts this data in, and this person has to pull it out, and put it back in another system. That system's all capitals, this one's not. And then the state calls up and says, oh, your data's crap, you gotta go fix it, and then they gotta pull it and push it and put it. It's the most convoluted, we've talked about, we need another data person, What we need now, and part of it was in your technology plan, integrating all these systems, but we need to know that we're getting it. Because, counting on 4 different people to update 4 different databases with basically the same crap is a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, when she comes into, Garcia, we need to know how that's going, because that was the whole point of a flow chart. Can you tell me where this stuff is going and who's doing it?
yes.
Anyway.
And the last piece is also the board has expressed a need for procedures and protocols, and we as a team have expressed needs for procedures and protocols. So we're taking a district-wide systems approach to our protocols, and we've started this work. Caroline will speak to a little bit more how we've drilled down in the instructional piece. Elliot has already spoken about it, technology, about the importance of policy and procedures. So right now we're reviewing and revising current protocols and also working towards developing new protocols to streamline our own practices. It's in its infancy. We're categorizing in big buckets such as human resources, technology, instruction, business, communication, and then filling in these buckets with existing procedures that we have and ones that we want to create as teams. And we're going to use this information to create plans of action, develop timelines, and then also assign this work to our teams. So that's sort of the big picture, the broad stroke. And again, Caroline can speak to some of the work we've accomplished during retreat. And we'll be giving you ongoing updates around this work as well. And that's all I have to report. Caroline.
Okay, so I did put this into board docs, so if you had an opportunity to review it, pardon my redundancy, but for those that maybe didn't have an opportunity, I really tried to break it down under personalized learning, which is something you're going to hear a lot about. Personalized learning is sort of the new age response to intervention, multi-tiered systems of support, and basically it's about building systems that can support students regardless of their own need in an inclusive environment. So there's a lot of differentiation where someone might need something and someone else might need something totally differently, and it's working through systems to be able to meet each student's individual needs and support them so that they can reach their own maximum level of success. So in social emotional learning, which we know is something that we absolutely need to focus on right now, we started talking about different protocols, and the core administrative team, so central office, has attended recently a training through Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, which was really good. And basically, our role in this is to support the building leaders. So each building leader will have a team that will also study and embed Yale rulers, the practices and the entire program into the building. So that will be a year-long process where their teams will spend about 6 weeks in the fall to be able to get trained up on all of this, and then there will be like an implementation plan that we will help to support and work through so that this is something that's fully implemented K-12. Elliot, can you just put that? So one of the fundamental pieces is creating very like language and allowing students to all speak in the same terms and find comfort in something that is very standardized, right? So it's very predictable. So being able to check in. So if you're looking at the bottom left, that is if you are low energy going up to high energy. And then it is your measure of pleasantness on the left being, I'm feeling like I'd rather just crawl back into that kind of thing. Don't want to be social, to all the way, feeling very pleasant, high speed kind of thing. So it's something where you can actually have the mood meter without any words, but what they really empower students to be able to do is to find a word for their emotion, because it's something that's very difficult. Students don't necessarily all have supportive environments where they're taught language around emotion, how they are feeling. They might feel like, yeah, I don't have a lot of energy and I don't really feel great right now, so I'm somewhere in the blue. But now it's like starting to put words with that. How are you feeling, right? So part of it could also become like a journaling exercise. It doesn't necessarily have to be tell the whole class how you're feeling and why are you feeling that way, whatever, right? But it's an opportunity for students to sort of look inward and also be able to say, like, do I want to stay or do I want to shift, right? So how do I shift this? So engaging in like emotional regulation, self-regulation, and being able to choose an activity where it could be journaling, it could be taking a walk, getting fresh air, it could be yoga, it could be music, whatever it is. So this is something that will actually be rolled out K-12, and it's part of a larger goal to really help identify students who maybe are having consistent struggles or even like periodic struggles so that we can better support them. And it's creating a common language around it so that students understand emotions are normal, they're very good, they're important, we're supposed to
Excuse me,
feel.
Caroline.
Yes.
I do have a question, really don't need to cut you off, but otherwise we'll lose the moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
When you're processing, doing this with your group or team, you have a school psychologist involved in?
Yeah, so each of the buildings will have some of our mental health counseling staff engaged in the work each of our buildings does. So that will be very good.
Yeah, I think that's great. As long as, you know, it's gone through that.
So that will be the supports of the emotional regulation as well as how do we work this out? How do we, if we choose to shift how we're feeling and we want to feel better, how can we, right? So it's engaging not just this piece of identifying the emotions, but what Mark Brackett, who is the person, the founder of this at Yale, he basically said that you can mean it, you can tweet it. So it's creating the language around it, and then also just giving it life sometimes can be enough to.
Correct, giving it life, but sometimes, I know you're dealing with children and not adults, but sometimes it unleashes a lot of different emotions, different people. It could be powerful emotions, and that's why, you know, with it, as long as it's being done through with oversight with the school psychology.
And the emotions are there, right? It's just a matter of how do we sort of shine a light on something that we're then able to help them with, which is the bigger piece, right?
Correct. Yes.
And maybe even before it becomes a disruption in our school day. So that's the goal, right? That we can better serve whatever social emotional needs that they have, if we can help them to recognize it.
Correct, I agree.
Yes. So, one of
Caroline,
the,
is this software or is this
I didn't
like
hear
a
that.
methodology or is this software?
oh,
that
no,
we, like,
that's
click
it.
on?
Right, so that's it, it can be that simple. We could create a software where students could check in via an app or a form. We could be able to do that, so you could look and see like, wow, all of my classes in the blue today were really low energy, we're not feeling so pleasant, like maybe as a group, we need to do something, you know, mindfulness to kind of lift the whole mood of the whole group kind of thing. So it's a lot of really good SEL data about where our kids are, just in general, or where individual students are as well. And it would only be used to be able to support them better and to intervene. So the next thing is the building administrators and myself. We, Laura has been trained previously. We all went to a training from Dr. Ross Green. So he's authored some really amazing books. The Explosive Child and Lost at School being two of his most popular books. And he talks about a shift in mindset that really allows adults to be able to support children. And I'm saying adults because we think here teachers, but it's also a really instructive tool for families who maybe have a child that is having difficulty regulating their behaviors. So it's a shift in mindset from the idea that kids will behave if they want to, and he says, well, kids will behave if they are able to, meaning that sometimes kids have to navigate situations where it's requiring more skills than they have at that current moment. And it's helping to identify what the lagging skill or unsolved problem is for that child, because if you can do that and you can isolate a skill that maybe they need to grow in, then you are able to better equip them to deal with life's challenges. So it really gives us a role to help students to evolve and grow in a way that can help them with more socially, like pro-social behaviors in the future, which is really something that he kind of focuses on, less on the behavior and more about solving the problems that make the behavior a thing anyway, right? So that's a big thing. We're really excited about that. We also have DVDs and training tools to work with our staff in the building. So we know that when students are struggling social emotionally, sometimes we do tend to see some more behavior. So this is a very proactive approach to be able to help students and to bring them into the conversation and have them start to verbalize what not. Like, why is it that every time we ask you to take out your science notebook, you're running out of the class? You know, that kind of thing, and just letting them be a part of that conversation. In terms of curriculum, instruction, and data, the administrative team has been hard at work this summer. I feel like it's been sort of like that hamster on a wheel thing again. We did an administrative retreat from July 26th to July 28th in Saratoga. It was awesome. We had full days of very like instructional work that I think created a lot of products that we're really proud of. So the topics range from strength finder inventory, where each member of the administrative team took a quiz to identify what their strengths in leadership are. So we were able to catalog that on one big spreadsheet and look at where our leadership team is very strong, and maybe even where there are some gaps within our leadership team, but also be able to identify, like, if I have this particular thing that I'm working on, who are maybe the best people whose strengths I need to engage right now to be able to get this off the ground, communicate it out, so everybody has those different strengths, and in cataloging that, we can all do more efficient work. We also worked with the meeting-wise protocols from Harvard. You may remember, if you've been on the board for a little bit, that we did the data-wise training through Harvard Graduate School of Education. The meeting-wise protocols go along with it. So that was something that we were able to incorporate into our standing agenda formats. And then again, this new meter was something that we rolled out to the whole administrative team. We started working on it. It's now become a norm. We start each of our meetings in that way, which is great. because it's even important for us to check in with one another, right? To say that we're all sort of ready for this work, whatever the work is, each day, and just identifying that we too as humans also have emotions, and that normalizes it for the students that we work with. We worked on standardizing hiring practices and also identified the core values of our team. We took a deep dive into the district data as well as each of the building data, data stories. And we've created 30, 60, 90 plans for how we want to start to affect change with the data in each of the buildings. We also created this actionable step for each of our buildings in terms of data. We have standard operating procedures that we're working on for each of our departments, like Laura had mentioned, which is really great. And like one of the things that we spoke about, Brian and I spoke about, like, well, where do we even start with this? Well, what are the things that are consistently having to be explained over and over and over again in the business office setting? Let's start there, creating those standard operating procedures, right? And like for us, we started with hiring, making sure that the hiring process looks the same, no matter what building it's happening. So those are the ways that we're just trying to find out, well, this is how we look the same. Our personalized learning plan, that's the same thing we're doing. We're trying to standardize the processes for students being referred for additional supports throughout all 4 buildings. So that's kind of how we're working through these standard operating procedures, and we're expecting the list to grow over time. So I did include a little video from our retreat with a little thank you to board. Thank you for letting us do this. It's amazing work. Since we've been home, we've been continuing this work, meeting in workshop, but here's our little video. Captured some of our experiences, including whitewater rafting, which was an amazing team building experience, especially trying to get everyone back in the raft.
Oh, I noticed how fast you went by that, so we couldn't pick out who was crying.
Yes. And I just want to dial back actually to June, because I realized that we've never spoken about, we had those professional development days approved in June, so thank you for all that. We were able to work with multiple different community partners. We had Ramco for Children who came in and led discussions and instruction on trauma-informed instructional practices, because we do know that it's ever more important to be prepared for students who have been through this even collective trauma, right, that this last 18 months has caused. Rick Keller-Coffey from the Center for Prevention of Child Abuse conducted 2 virtual sessions on the identification of and intervention for children experiencing abuse and neglect, or even exhibiting those high-risk behaviors that are sometimes associated with those experiences. And we had Gregory Fredericks from Harvard Northern Rochester BOCES who worked with our integrated co-teaching team to strengthen those teaching practices. So it was throughout the 4 days, teachers had a smattering of different experiences, some SEL, some directly related to instruction, some were both. But overall, much appreciated to be able to have that time, since this past year has been anything but typical in terms of our opportunities to provide PD. As you will notice, here in this building, the middle school is under huge transformation. Thank you so much to Mike and his team. They've created a new library, a STEM learning space, and sixth grade center. So this will cluster all of our sixth graders on this second fall year, which is really important in smoothing their transition. That's one of the things transition years tend to be difficult for children. So this is a really great approach to be able to kind of allow them to have a soft landing in middle school. Additionally, the pre-K and kindergarten teachers have been meeting. The pre-K rooms are well underway. It will be housed in the old Elm Drive library. That library has been relocated. So a lot of great things are happening all over the district. And we have some upcoming events. In September, 24 of our teachers will receive training in the Orton Gillingham approach to teaching reading. We do have some folks who have already been trained up to the associate level. That allows them to do intervention approaches with using Orton Gillingham, even one-on-one, so intensive intervention. But the 24 teachers will receive training on how to do full group or small group Orton Gillingham instruction. So for any of you who are familiar with Orton Gillingham, it's a very sought after program. It is one of the approaches that is very supportive of students with dyslexia, who tend to have challenges learning to read in typical classrooms, right? So this multisensory approach is extremely important for them. So we're really glad to be able to equip that many of our teachers to be able to provide this support, especially at the elementary level, but we'll also have some of our service providers who work in the AIS and special education program being able to do this all the way to K-12. So we're really excited. On August 23rd and 24th, as you had seen on that video, we will officially welcome our newly hired teachers in. We have 2 full days of introduction and orientation for them. Mr. Sotero is finalizing plans for his pre-K and kindergarten orientation. That will be those first couple days of September. And on September 1st, we will be working with regional safety services just to review our building safety plans to make sure that they are all ready to be entered. That's it.
Do you know what the enrollment is for pre-K?
22 as of last.
That's excellent. Very good.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
For the mood meter, in your notes, it said, train teachers and families.
Yes,
So,
we're going to be rolling this out for Family University as well.
all right, okay. Thank you.
I do have one question. Since it would have been the first administrative retreat, Laura, what did you think of it? What did you get out of it?
I was here, I was going virtually, we had our summer scholars here. So I wanted to make sure that it was administrator on campus. What did I think of it? I thought it was well organized. I thought it was intentional. It really spoke to the work that we want to accomplish. I feel like recently we've been working in it, and this is where we were able to work on it, on our protocols and procedures, on our strengths, on our team building, on our hiring processes, how when we're looking for a candidate, who is this person? What does this person has to have? Child first, of course, but what are the other attributes? And so we really went deep into what are we looking for a candidate and how are we going to get that candidate through very intentional processes. And I thought it was really nice to be able to really get our hands on and in procedures and protocols so that we're all clear about what we need to do to streamline our work, to be clear with our community, to be clear with our students, to be clear with our staff. But we don't know how we're hiring or how we're processing an internship request. So how can we be supportive to the rest of the community? So I felt like it was really powerful, it was really well done, and it was a team effort. I mean,
It's too bad you couldn't be, I guess, up there with them.
yeah.
Do this. Nobody else could have taken over.
No, they were all there.
I'm saying, yeah, all
All the
right.
administrators were up there, and it was just uncomfortable to have students and staff here.
Yeah, I
on campus.
understand. It's
So-
too bad you couldn't.
Next year, we're going to plan it later, maybe the early of August, so that if I can go as well. It was well done, bravo.
You think it had anything to do with everyone in that video was smiling? Yeah. I'm just- All right. Now, you gotta take those shots when you get them. Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah.
What is the first day of school, the first day of pre-K as well?
Yeah. All
right. So now we got some new business, financials and warrants. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor? Any against? All right, to approve the tax warrant. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions, concerns, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Authorizing fund balance levels. Do I have a motion to? Yeah, do I have a motion to adopt? Good. Seconds. Yep. Any questions or concerns? Brian went through this. We're really well. All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right. First reading of the policy 9645, the whistleblower policy. Do we need to? What do we need to do?
Just this is just for you to do your reading, then we'll put it up at the next reading for the second to approve.
Any comments from the board itself?
Is this, Cheryl, is this in the public? As well as, so it's attached to public?
It's in the public.
Okay, as long as it's public content.
Yeah.
And documents speaks for itself.
All right. Are there any questions from the public?
There are not.
All right, let's go to District Facilities Committee. You guys met?
There's two person board.
We discussed a lot of it earlier. We also discussed the gazebo, survey the community as far as getting their input, as far as what their thoughts, and then we're going to talk about it again on August 24th. We did discuss the cell tower, but I don't know how much we've gone into that. And middle school garden. Actually, I mean, if you want to talk about the Elm Playground, someone over there, or Jen, you were there, as far as what they're planning on doing. That's kind of an exciting thing.
Just with all this all the
So
stuff.
that donated, right, since all that donated, correct me if I miss anything, but there's also someone that's gonna donate their time and I guess equipment to dig for the foundation for it, and they went over all of that. So it's gonna be a very little cost to us, it's solely for the pre-K kids. And they took into account, if you've ever been to this place, it actually is really high on the ground, so they took into account, you know, not having the kids falling from 12 feet in the air, so it's gonna be a little lower, and they just took into account a lot of the safety, like the netting around it and things like that, and it's gonna go where that part of the fence is, where it used to be like a baseball field, there's like some metal fencing there.
Oh, it's going way over there.
So they can come out, because the pre-K classes are right through that door, so they can go right out there. So it's awesome.
Is somebody, Mike, is somebody looking at maintaining and cleaning that stuff once it's up? You know, like what's it gonna cost and how, who's gonna do it? I mean, imagine,
Really should be no maintenance, we just have to doing what we're doing now, disinfectant, like we do the playgrounds. And,
well, and I forget, this was years ago over in Millerton, but there was like netting on it.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff,
fishing,
so
it's
that
like
gets
fishing
more.
netting, it should last a really long time.
Right.
It's in really good shape now, I haven't looked at it fully down low. And then the only thing we may have to change every few years from being outside is some of the styrofoam that goes on the pipes.
Yeah.
That's not a big expense.
And what about the clean, I remember seeing that guy like basically backpack spray that whole thing down with the kid, and this was before, way before COVID, so do we have, like, do we know how to do that? We got the stuff,
And what good is outdoor versus indoor, but
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
and his difference was he was on concrete with pads on the ground.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a foot of wood chips underneath it.
cool. And Chris, what are we going to the public with about the gazebo? Like, would you mind if we tear it down?
I think it's a survey that we're gonna post, and we were gonna talk to the town, right, to see if they would post it on their website as well. Just to put it out there, just to see if anybody has an issue with it. You know, we talked about alternative plans that we could potentially do on the grounds of the elementary school that might give us more, you know, outdoor space to teach, have bands come, that type of thing, like a mini band shell type of thing, like we have at the high school up at the football field, they have that overhead. But yeah, I don't think anyone agrees, that anyone thinks that we should spend the cost to refurbish.
Okay.
so, yeah, part of that was,
Have a little, I guess.
right, when you put it out to the community, because everybody would say, great, we built it.
Right.
But somehow letting them know that's a very,
Cost of it.
yeah,
I would just say, I mean,
big ticket.
it has no use to the school district. So whether it's like $10 million or $1.50, getting rid of that thing, that, you know, the fact that it's a safety issue and it has no real purpose in life. I mean, other than, you know,
Does the town and the village have a historical society?
and I think we're like saying,
They want. If they
I
want, if they
Well,
want it.
well, remember, they finally got all the permits and supposedly work starts this week on Bennett.
Yeah.
And the band shells, and they're building a second band shell. I can't imagine anybody is gonna like have an emotion.
You're right, ask around.
Right, we thought it was like a nice way to reach out to the community instead of saying, oh, by the way, this is what we're doing.
Fundraiser for
But I
somebody.
think, Brian, correct me, I think Mike, or Mike tried to do some digging about its historical value or sentiment or something like that.
Contacted the agency responsible for it, it's called
Yes.
SHPO, it's the State Historic Preservation
Yeah.
Office. And they've allowed us to understand that we have no responsibility, there's nothing cataloged or we have to seek to preserve, so.
What might consider doing is, once we've gotten the input, and, you know, tear it down, hopefully. I mean, not that we tear it down, but it might be something we go and present or discuss at a village board meeting. Just to show, you know, that we're working together with the village. Because there's always been this, well, there used to be a while ago, this, you know, I don't have to talk to you because I'm a school district, we don't talk to you because we're the village. I think if we could get, it would be probably a great thing to go and say, like, you know, this thing is rotting, it's falling down, it's of no use to us. We understand we own it, but we want to make sure you're clear why we're tearing it down, or, you know, or fixing it.
That was brought up.
Okay.
The majority of our meeting, though, had to deal with the capital project and organizing it. It was a 2-hour meeting. Wasn't it? Most of it was had to do with the capital project.
Do that, you know. Right. Facility report, Michael.
So normally in July, there aren't that many student things because we're just doing summer cleaning and. But this year, because so many people are moving, we had 254 of them. 200, just in July alone, 253 of them were done. The last one, the line was ran after the end of July. So that'll be in next month. We only had 2 date specific things. So last month I gave you a summary of what we did from June 28th to July 21st. So from July 22nd to August 11th, I'll just give you an idea, we finished reassembling the shelves and put all the books in order in the new middle school library. We cleared the 3 collection ponds. We finished the new bookcases at Elm for the new library. We cleaned and disinfected all the classrooms during summer school daily at the high school, because they were using it every day, which is something that maybe people don't realize. I want to put it in there. We painted rooms 55, 58, 52, 50, 29, a storage closet in room 44, and the 3rd floor vestibule at the middle school. We painted rooms 89, 66, 84, and the main entrance vestibule at Alden. We painted the overhang that goes around the front of the middle school, where the doors are, and around the sides of the building where the windows are. On the 1st and 2nd levels, also painted the loading dock wall at the middle school. We spread out and leveled the new mulch at the Elm playground and the Elm swing set. We tilled the soil and put mulch in front of Alden, and also some river rocks up both sides of the main entrance to give it a much nicer look, because we've been working towards that. We removed 13 old 8-foot blackboards and installed 26 new 4x4 whiteboards in the middle school. We removed all electrical outlets that were in the way of all the new bookshelves in Elm's new library. We replaced 2 hot water elements in the middle school hot water heater. Alden stage 3 of the fire alarm upgrade. We've done a fire alarm upgrade. We did Elm when we did the whole building over, and then we got the price and we broke it into 3 phases, and we've been doing it in the last 3 years. And this year is the last phase for Alden for the fire alarm. So that's done now, actually. We started construction in the new administrative offices in the middle school. We've cleaned, oiled, and replaced the filters in the UVs at Elm, the middle school, and the high school. Alden is being done after that. That shit's done after. We moved the fax room to the 3rd level at the middle school. The Alden roof fans are all been checked, belts and oiled. Replaced UV motor in room 29 and a bearing in room 29 at the middle school. Relocated all the district files and shelves from room 29 to room 16. We replaced the damaged front wall at the middle school garage. And we replaced the faded signs in the middle school and high school parking lots. And then we also had a sprinkler inspection the other day at the high school. And we had our high school and middle school gym surfaces restored. Surface. That's Friday, Thursday and Friday. That's just up to August 11th.
Where's my favorite part, Mike, about the amount of fuel oil we burn?
Oh, that's 0.
Love it.
I would put that on it. It's 0.
I'm gonna take over for Claudia, trim all the hedges here.
We're not doing that anymore. You don't have to do that anymore.
No, she's not.
Nice. Nice.
No, we just still walk the dog over there. It's still standing ladder. It's done.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Mike?
No, thank you, Mike. You did a lot of work.
Yeah, the projects, guys have been pretty good.
All right. Oh, enrollment report, any MES report?
Nothing. They haven't done anything, right?
No, not over this one.
Right.
No, not.
It's
all in one.
Yes.
PTO report?
Yeah, they just had their meeting this week. I just said, you know, if there's anything new.
Okay. Report, always fascinating. Future agenda items. Building safety plan, building level safety plan coming up on the 7th, long-term financial plan on the 7th. Is there anything you guys have thought about you want on here, Paul? Anything? All right. Expectations. So with that, do I have a motion to recess into executive session for the discussion of matters of apparel, public safety is disclosed, and and seek legal advice, negotiations under the Taylor Law. Just a reminder to anybody that's listening that we may come back from executive session and take action on something discussed in executive session. So if you want to stay tuned, stay tuned. All right. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Any discussion or anything? All in favor? Any against? Very good.